Chapter 99. After Wuxia and Xianxia settled down, Ren and Xianxia went to report to the chief of the base. The chief's office was in the hunter group's headquarters. Wuxia's mind power probed out, and he could easily detect their every move. The chief was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He was also a hunter. Seeing the two of them enter, he put down the documents in his hand and said, "This time, we sent 9 helicopters to the other 9 bases to exchange information. You two came back the latest." Ren lowered his head and said, "I'm sorry, Chief. We ran into some trouble." Then, he told him how the people of Base C1 were hostile to them, how strange things happened, how they were locked up in the detention room, and so on. As for how they were suddenly cleared of their wrongdoings and who did those things, the people of Base C1 didn't tell them at all. Naturally, they didn't know. Then, they told the chief about the construction of the laboratory and the zombie farm. The bureau chief agreed with this. The helicopters that came back earlier had brought back all kinds of news from the other bases. They said that a few bases had built laboratories to study viruses, hunters, and psychokinesis. Their base C2 hadn't built a laboratory yet. He was planning to build a laboratory. In the end, Xianxia said, "Chief, on our way back, it seems that there was a strong person in front of us." The chief's eyes narrowed slightly. Xianxia continued, "On the way back, my psychic power could often detect the corpses of some mutated beasts and zombies on the ground. It seems that these mutated beasts and zombies were all killed in one move and torn in half. And even some level 5 mutated beasts and zombies were killed in one move." Ren's expression changed slightly. "There's such a strong person?" The chief thought of another point. "You mean he was in front of you all the way?" Xianxia nodded. "It seems so." The chief frowned slightly. "In other words, he's probably in our base now?" Xianxia nodded. The bureau chief pondered for a moment and asked, "Could it be the 2 people you brought back?" Xianxia shook her head slightly. "The 2 of them are just ordinary people. They've been with us all this time, so it can't be them." When the bureau chief heard this, his expression became even more serious. "The strongest hunter in our base is only level 5. The strongest psychokinesis was only at level 5. If it's really as you said, then the strength of that powerhouse is obviously far beyond level 5. He sneaked into our base without anyone noticing. He must be up to something. Ren, tell the hunter group to be on high alert. Xianxia, remind all the psychokinesis members to secretly investigate the base. Let's see if we can find anything." The 2 men looked at each other and said, "Yes, Chief." In the end, the bureau chief said, "The 9 helicopters we sent this time brought back a lot of useful information. I'll get someone to explain it to you in detail later, so you can understand the current situation." When Wuxia heard this, his heart skipped a beat. The world's situation was important information. Soon, someone came over to explain the world's situation to Xianxia and Ren. From this, it could be seen that the chief thought highly of these 2 people. From this person, Wuxia understood a lot of things that he didn't know before. And what surprised Wuxia the most was that people in other bases had seen a zombie from afar. That was a much stronger and more terrifying existence than a level 10 strong mutated zombie. With a roar, more than 30 level 10 strong mutated beasts' heads exploded. All the other zombies, even level 10 strong mutated zombies, were obedient in front of that zombie. Because that zombie was much stronger than a level 10 strong mutated zombie. So they called it a super mutated zombie. When Wuxia heard this, his heart trembled. There was a super mutated zombie? At the same time, he remembered the king that the 2 zombies mentioned when he killed them in the blood pool. It was very likely that the king was a super mutated zombie. With his current strength of level 10 psychokinesis, he could easily kill a level 10 strong mutated zombie. Then what about a super mutated zombie? Wuxia felt that his telekinesis might have a little advantage. But the other party's roar could explode the head of a level 10 strong mutated beast. In other words, the other party could use sound waves to attack. That's hard to say. It seemed that in the next period of time, he had to sign in well and improve his strength. That night, Wuxia signed in and injected 10 enhancers. After these 10 enhancers were injected, his body's strength finally improved again. He reached level 10 hunter. In the next half a month, he continued to sign in and give out enhancers, increasing his body's strength to the limit. At this point, whether it was his telekinesis or his body's strength, he had reached the limit. If he wanted to break through again, he really needed a certain opportunity. Perhaps the dragon ruins would be his opportunity. However, in the past few days, he hadn't gone to the dragon ruins. After all, he didn't know much about the wilderness around base C2. It wouldn't be too late to go to the dragon ruins after he understood the surrounding situation. At the same time, in the past few days, the base had already begun to plan to build a laboratory and a corpse farm. Of course, the preparations would take a long time. Therefore, Immortal was very idle these days. He wandered around base C2 every day. In the eyes of others, he was taking a stroll and wandering. But when Immortal was wandering, he had been using his telekinesis to investigate everything in base C2. As long as anyone talked about base C2 and the situation around the base, they couldn't escape his detection. Finally, after a month, he had almost figured out the situation around base C2 and the surrounding area. The strength of the strong mutated beasts and strong mutated zombies around base C2 was much stronger than those around base C1. But they were all below level 10. Immortal could easily deal with them. At the same time, he also heard a strange thing. 100 kilometers to the east, the plants there were blood red. Immortal took out the map and looked at it. 100 kilometers to the east was the location of the dragon ruins. This made him frown tightly. He thought that as long as he found the right opportunity here, he could easily go to the dragon ruins to sign in. He didn't expect that there would be something strange about the dragon ruins. Why was it so difficult to level up? If his thoughts were known by other hunters and psychokinesis, they would probably want to kick him to death. We only level up once every 4 to 5 years, or even 7 to 8 years. You level up several times a year. You think it's difficult? Difficult my ass. That night it was drizzling. Immortal lay on the bed, eating the roasted chicken that he had signed in from the cafeteria while drinking beer. He waited for the arrival of 12 o'clock. However, at around 11:30, an ear-piercing alarm sounded in the base. Chapter 100. At night, Immortal took out the virtual sentry tower and set it up on the roof of his apartment building. It was better to be careful as he was new here. 11:30 p.m. Immortal felt a little hungry. He immediately took out the roast chicken and beer and ate happily. In the past year, in order to make his mental power and physical strength reach the limit, he almost never went to the cafeteria to sign in. Now that both of them had reached the limit, he could finally satisfy his hunger. Just as he was happily eating the roast chicken and drinking beer, suddenly, an ear-piercing alarm sounded in the base. Beep, beep, beep. Then, urgent shouts could be heard from the loudspeaker. Zombies are attacking the city. All hunters and psychokinesis immediately go to the northeast of the first line of defense. Immortal sighed. He couldn't even eat supper in peace. Then, he shook his head and ignored it. According to his understanding in the past few days, there were many mutant beasts and zombies in the wilderness around base C1. But at most, they were strong mutant zombies below level 3. And base C2 had level 5 hunters and level 5 psychokinesis. There was no need for him to do anything. Thinking of this, he continued to eat and drink happily. At this time, in the northeast of base C2, outside the first wall, there was already a large black mass of zombies gathered. Preliminary estimates showed that there were tens of thousands of zombies. Inside the wall, the hunter group had already gathered. They all had solemn expressions. Under the illumination of the searchlight on the sentry tower, they saw the zombies gathered on the opposite side. The total number was estimated to be 10,000. Among them, those standing in the back row had expressions that were obviously different from ordinary zombies. They were all strong mutant zombies. And the number of strong mutant zombies had reached a terrifying number of more than 1,000. This was equivalent to more than 1,000 hunters. Which base could have more than 1,000 hunters? It was already a lot to have 60 or 70 hunters. And in base C2, there were only 63 hunters. Fortunately, There were more than 30 psychokinesis in base C2. And there were more than 5,000 hunters. Clearly, this was going to be an extremely tragic battle. If they won, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. If they lost, there wouldn't be many zombies left. As a hunter, the chief of the base personally came to the front line to command. His face was as still as water. Although they were facing an army, they did not panic at all. He commanded the hunting group in an orderly manner. But no one knew how heavy his heart was at this moment. In the past, when the zombies gathered to attack the city on a large scale, their scouts in the wild could detect some movements in advance. However, today, none of their scouts had returned with any news. This was enough to show that tonight's zombies were far stronger than before. They were so powerful that even the scouts couldn't send back any information. And because the scouts did not send back any information, their preparations were somewhat inadequate. So much so that they did not move the people to the underground shelters in advance. It was close to midnight. The light rain gradually turned into heavy rain. The rain poured down in torrents. From time to time, a bolt of lightning would appear in the sky, winding like a dragon. At a certain moment, a thick bolt of lightning tore through the night sky. Among the zombies, an 8-year-old lowly zombie girl slowly stood out. She was wearing a sky-blue princess dress and had a double ponytail. If one looked at her from behind, she was definitely a cute little lowly. But if one looked at her from the front, the left side of her face had been torn open and had been drooping. When she walked, the left side of her face was like a pig's ear, flapping up and down. Her grayish-white eyes stared at the wall in the distance under the lightning. She paused for a few seconds. Suddenly, she raised her right claw and opened her torn mouth. From her throat, she let out a shocking roar. Roar, roar. In the next moment, these tens of thousands of zombies all roared. Accompanied by this deafening roar, all the zombies surged toward the high wall together. On the sentry tower, the base chief saw this and held the giant sword in his hand tightly. He shouted, "Fire!" Whoosh, boom. Tongues of fire were constantly spurting out from the shooting holes on the high wall. Those ordinary zombies were suddenly swept to the ground one after another. Their flesh and blood were blown away by the rockets. However, the number of ordinary zombies was close to 10,000. They could not eliminate nearly 10,000 zombies in a short period of time. What's more, there were more than 1,000 strong mutated zombies. Artillery fire could not do anything to them. The distance between the strong mutated zombies and the high wall was quickly closing. On the sentry tower, the base chief ordered loudly, "Psychokinesis, prepare to attack with flying knives. Every psychokinesis, leave a hunter beside them to protect them. The rest of the hunters, go outside the wall and stop the zombies from attacking the wall. Be careful not to leave the range of your telekinesis." Soon, more than 30 hunters jumped down from the wall and lined up outside the wall. After a while, the flood of zombies collided with these 30 hunters. On the wall, nearly 400 flying knives were like 400 sides of the Grim Reaper, harvesting these zombies. Even if it was a strong mutated zombie, if it was accidentally hit in the head by these flying knives, it would be killed in one blow. And the lowly female zombie stared at the base chief on the sentry tower. In her grayish-white eyes, there was a fierce light. Like a beast that chose people to devour. At the same time in the base, urgent words were constantly coming out from the loudspeaker. "Emergency in the northeast, all positions, please send soldiers to support as soon as possible. I repeat, support as soon as possible." Mo sure used his telekinesis to explore. In the heavy rain, he saw that the surrounding patrols had already headed to the northeast. At the same time, the zombie hunters, patrols, and soldiers in other positions also rushed to the northeast. Mo sure still did not move. "All residents, move to the nearest emergency shelter as soon as possible. All residents, move to the nearest emergency shelter as soon as possible." Mo sure could detect that in the apartment building, almost everyone had already rushed to the nearest underground shelter. He still did not move and continued to eat his roasted chicken. At the same time, at the entrance of the underground shelter more than 700 meters away from the apartment building, people fled to the underground shelter as if they were crazy. Among the crowd, there were cries of children and women from time to time. Although everyone knew that the zombies were getting stronger and stronger, human hunters and psychokinesis were not getting stronger as fast as the zombies. Humans seemed to be heading towards extinction. However, when this day really came, they still could not believe it. Crack! In the sky, a bolt of lightning zigzagged across. Under this bolt of lightning, a figure suddenly appeared at the entrance of the shelter without warning. The soldier in charge of commanding at the entrance was shocked when he saw this figure. He quickly shone a flashlight over. In the heavy rain, the left side of the figure's face was badly mutilated. On the right side of his face, there wasn't even any flesh and blood, only white bones remained. The strangest thing was that this guy was actually grinning, as if he was laughing. Chapter 101. The hundreds of people at the entrance saw this scene and immediately fled in panic. Zombies! There are zombies! The already chaotic entrance of the fallout shelter became even more chaotic. No one would have thought that when the zombie army besieged the city, almost everyone in the zombie hunter group was transferred to the northeast to defend, and zombies would suddenly appear in the rear. Zombies were not scary, but zombies with culture were scary. Even zombies knew the art of war. And this zombie, with a smart look and a mocking smile on its mouth. It was obvious that it was a strong mutated zombie. The soldier with the flashlight saw this, although he was panicking. But at this time, he was not thinking about himself, but the thousands of people here. Although he was a little panicked, he still raised his gun and aimed at the smiling zombie. The smiling zombie did not pay attention to the soldier at all. One in each hand, it grabbed a woman and a little girl next to it, turned around, and quickly jumped away. The soldier was stunned. All the zombies he had seen before, whether ordinary zombies, mutated zombies, or strong mutated zombies. When they saw humans, they were like hungry wolves seeing lambs, and they directly pounced on them to tear them apart. But this zombie was not right. It did not bite the woman and the little girl. Instead, it grabbed the woman and the little girl, turned around, and fled into the darkness. What was going on? At the same time, several more zombies appeared near the fallout shelter. Each of them was a strong mutated zombie. They were all the same as the previous zombie. They did not fight with these soldiers. Instead, they grabbed the people next to them, turned around, and jumped into the darkness. In the apartment building next to the zombie hunter group's headquarters. Naturally, Immortal was able to clearly detect all of this. In fact, when he set up the virtual sentry tower, his telekinesis spread out to a radius of 5 kilometers, and he had already detected that there were strong mutated zombies lurking outside the southwest city wall. Immortal felt a little strange in his heart. The behavior of these zombies was very strange. Ordinary zombies could not help but roar when they saw humans. These zombies could clearly see the humans on the sentry tower by the high wall, but they could suppress their impulse and quietly lurk in the trees. It was very abnormal. Immortal did not make a move, because he wanted to wait and see what they were going to do. They had been lurking there for more than 3 hours. When the battle on the high wall in the northeast began, the nearby hunters, patrols, and corpse hunting teams all went there to reinforce. These more than 100 strong mutated zombies, under the cover of the heavy rain, jumped over the wall. They went all the way to the shelter. At this moment, an even stranger scene occurred. Those thousands of humans were clearly right in front of them, but they forcefully suppressed the urge to bite down. Instead, each zombie grabbed 2 humans, turned around and fled into the darkness. Were they going to capture them and use them as food for the winter? Just as Immortal was puzzled, a zombie saw Immortal's figure from the window. With a roar, he leaped towards Immortal's window. However, as soon as he jumped into the air, bang, a muffled sound was heard. Its entire body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. If this zombie could dream, he would never have imagined that he would die in the hands of an ordinary human being in such a way. Immortal sighed. Memory plunder could only plunder human memories. But it could not work on zombies. Otherwise, by plundering the memories of these zombies, he should be able to know why they took these humans back. At the same time, within a radius of 1 kilometer, A strong mutated zombie, holding two women, had just passed through the window of a house. His body made a muffled sound. Bang! It was like the sound of a cannon in the water. The two women were suddenly thrown to the ground. The two knew they were going to die and were terrified. There was even a woman who had long been paralyzed with fear. The other woman still had some strength. She did not know why the zombie suddenly threw her to the ground. She looked up. The night was dark and the rain poured down. Nothing could be seen. She did not have time to think and quickly got up to escape. Her heart was extremely flustered. She took a deep step and a shallow step. She fell to the ground from time to time. She had already foreseen that she would not be able to run a few steps before being caught by the claw. However, she had already escaped 50 meters away. There was still no movement. She escaped another 100 meters. There was still no movement behind her. She felt the darkness and escaped hundreds of meters away. Under the lightning, she saw the warehouse door in front of her open. She quickly hid in and closed the warehouse door. She did not understand what had happened. Did the zombie just let her go like this? At the same time, the other woman finally slowly came back to her senses. There was a trace of strength in her body. A bolt of lightning flashed. With the reflection of the lightning, she did not see any trace of zombies around her. She did not understand what had happened. Why did the zombies suddenly let her go? But this was not the time to be entangled. Using the last bit of strength in her body, she struggled to get up and ran forward, one step at a time. At the same time, a similar scene was happening to more than 200 people. Bang 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 bang, more than 100 zombies burst into more than 100 clouds of blood mist. With the current strength of Immersive's telekinesis, these zombies were directly disintegrated. There were no broken limbs, no broken bodies. Their flesh and bones, under the effect of Immersive's telekinesis, all burst into particles that were not visible to the naked eye. Only when they were together could a cloud of blood mist be seen. The more than 200 people who were caught felt that they were suddenly thrown to the ground. When they got up, the zombies were nowhere to be seen. They did not have time to investigate further and got up to find a place to hide. At the same time, on the wall in the southeast corner, one of the zombies was running away. This was an 8-year-old lowly zombie. She had a double ponytail and was wearing a sky blue princess dress. Although she was small, her strength had reached level 5 strong mutant zombie. She was the strongest among all the zombies who had sneaked into the base. But at this time, she seemed to be panicking. His grayish-white eyes were filled with astonishment. She thought that a large number of zombies attacking the city at the northeast wall would attract attention. She could easily capture a large number of humans with these hundreds of strong mutant zombies. But the result was, when she was about to succeed, she saw the more than 100 strong mutant zombies that she brought, almost at the same time, all burst into a cloud of blood mist. No minced meat. No broken bones. Only blood mist. She had never seen such a method. Even her leader, the level 10 strong mutant zombie, could not do it at all. This was enough to show that there was a hidden powerhouse in the human base. What a despicable human. The only thing she could do at this time was to escape. She could feel that the reason why she was not dead yet was that she was outside the attack range of the hidden powerhouse. If the hidden powerhouse chased after her, she would have no chance to escape at all. So she used a speed of 150 meters per second, shuttling quickly in the heavy rain. However, could she escape? Chapter 102. The night was dark and heavy rain was pouring down. In this rainy night, a little girl was running at high speed. The little girl was about 8 years old and had 2 ponytails. She was wearing a sky blue princess dress. From the front, she looked like a beautiful little loli. But there was a bloody wound behind her neck. Through the wound, one could see the cervical vertebra inside. As her head turned left and right, the cervical vertebra was also constantly turning. It looked exceptionally terrifying. However, at this moment, the little lowly zombie was very panicked. As she ran forward, she would look back from time to time. In the past, she had chased humans countless times. When humans were chased by her, they were like this. As they ran, They would look back from time to time. This time, it was her turn. Her gray-white pupils were filled with shock and fear. Soon, she had already passed through the rain and escaped for 2 kilometers. With a leap, she easily jumped over the 3rd wall. She ran forward for another kilometer and crossed the 2nd wall. Then she ran for another kilometer at high speed. She was not far from the 1st wall. She looked back. The hidden powerhouse did not chase after her. She sighed in relief. Under the 1st wall, there were more than 10 soldiers. She did not care about them at all. As long as she jumped over the wall and entered the wilderness outside, she would be safe. Crack! A bolt of lightning cut through the night sky. She was as fast as lightning and stepped over the heads of the soldiers. She jumped onto the wall. As long as she took another step forward, she would be able to escape from the wall. However, in the next moment, whoosh! A black light seemed to be faster than lightning. It instantly cut through the sky and passed through the rain. It hit the head of the little lowly zombie and pierced through her mouth. The huge force sent the little lowly zombie flying for 100 meters. Bang! It was directly nailed to a white poplar tree that was more than a meter thick outside. Just like that, the little lowly zombie faced the tree trunk and hung 10 meters above the ground. It was as if a cute little girl was playing a game of princess kissing prince with the tree. However, on the back of the girl's head, there was a black spear that was more than a meter long. A moment later, the black spear seemed to be decomposed into gas by the rain and disappeared. The girl's body slowly slid down along the tree trunk. He brushed a bloody mark on the bark. Inside the wall, a soldier was shining a flashlight on the top of the wall. The soldier next to him asked, "Is there something wrong with him?" The soldier was puzzled. "I think I saw a girl standing on the wall." Another soldier scolded, "Did you shit your brains out when you were taking a dump? Which girl can jump up a wall that's more than 10 meters high? And in this terrible weather, which girl would run to the top of the wall?" "Are you crazy?" The soldier said, "That's a mutant zombie, a strong mutant zombie." "Oh right, there seems to be a long thorn growing from the back of her head." The other soldiers shook their heads. "I think there's something wrong with your head." The soldier shone his flashlight on the top of the wall but saw nothing. He shook his head himself. It was just a flash of lightning that he suddenly saw it. The time was too short, so he couldn't see it clearly. Perhaps he was hallucinating. At the same time, on the 2nd floor of the apartment building next to the hunting group, Emosure retracted his gaze from the window. He sighed, "It's raining heavily." Then he went back to the table and picked up the remaining half bottle of beer. He gulped it down. Burp. He let out a long burp. Northeast of the base, outside the wall, the zombies had already gained the upper hand. The hunting group lost 5 hunters. Psychokinesis also had one person's arm scratched by a zombie. Although the arm had been cut off, it was basically useless. He would soon become a zombie. As for the hunters, more than 100 people died and more than 300 were injured. Fighting with zombies, being injured was equivalent to death. At this time, only 200 of the strong mutant zombies were lost. On the sentry tower, the base chief's face was as solemn as the dark rainy night. Tonight's battle, even if they could win in the end, more than half of the hunting group would be killed. At this time, in the wilderness outside the high wall, a roar suddenly sounded. Roar, roar. All the zombies heard this roar. They suddenly turned around and retreated into the wilderness. In just over a minute, the nearly 10,000 zombies had all retreated. Only corpses were left on the ground. Everyone was stunned. What was going on? When zombies attacked cities, they basically didn't care about the cost. In the past few sieges, even if they did not have any advantage, they would fight until the last zombie fell. But today, they clearly had the advantage. Why did they suddenly retreat? Howren jumped a few times from outside the wall and came to the sentry tower. He said to the base chief, "Chief, why did these bastards suddenly retreat?" The base chief shook his head. There must be something fishy about this. But he could not figure it out for a while. At this time, a soldier under the sentry tower reported, "Chief, zombies sneaked into the base." Hearing this, the chief's face suddenly changed. He finally understood why these zombies suddenly retreated. It was a diversion. Thinking of this, he immediately roared, "Leave half of the hunters and psychokinesis guards. The rest, come back with me." Hao Ren's face also changed when he heard this. He cursed, "These bastards, how dare they do this?" Then, he jumped down from the sentry tower and was about to return to the base. Behind him, Xianxia also followed. "Hao Ren, I'll go too." Hao Ren did not say anything. He pulled Xianxia up and ran forward quickly. In the apartment building, Immortal saw that it was already past 12 o'clock. He said in his mind, "System, sign in." The system's voice quickly came, "Frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in event, kill the strong mutated zombie who abducted humans. Sign in reward, memory plunder upgraded." Looking carefully at the skill description, "Frowny face memory plunder. Use psychic power to plunder the memory of any creature. Note, the brain of a creature whose memory is plundered will be damaged to a certain extent. In serious cases, it will cause mental retardation. Use with caution." Immortal looked at the skill description and couldn't help but chuckle. The previous memory plunder could only plunder the memory of humans. But in the base, it was not very useful. Zombies and mutant beasts knew more about the wilderness than anyone else. Previously, he was still worried about how to obtain a large amount of information about the wilderness. But he didn't expect the system to upgrade memory plunders so quickly. With this skill, the next step would be to start with the zombies and mutated beasts to find out the situation in the dragon ruins. Only after figuring out the situation there would he have the confidence to make a move. Otherwise, if he went rashly and there was a super mutated zombie there, wouldn't he be sending himself to death for nothing? After doing all this, Immortal yawned. He closed his eyes in satisfaction. Not long after, snoring sounds could be heard. However, not long after, the door was suddenly knocked open with a bang. A black shadow instantly jumped into the room. Immortal, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly opened his eyes. Chapter 103. Immortal had just fallen asleep when the door was suddenly kicked open. A figure suddenly jumped into the room. Immortal suddenly opened his eyes. The figure stopped in the middle of the room and said loudly, "Immortal, Immortal." It turned out to be Hao Ren. Immortal replied, "I'm here." Hao Ren strode into the bedroom and was relieved to see that Immortal was fine. Then he laughed, "You're so relaxed. Didn't you hear the alarm in the base?" Immortal yawned and got up. "I'm too tired today. I slept too soundly." Hao Ren was speechless. "Just stay in the bedroom and don't run around. A zombie broke in." Immortal nodded. "Okay." Hao Ren said a few words and quickly left. Immortal closed the door and went back to sleep. As for the others, they were naturally not in the mood to sleep. Most of them had already moved to the underground shelter. Even those who didn't enter the underground shelter were hiding in their own houses and didn't dare to breathe. But what made them feel strange was that the base chief led the hunting group to search in the heavy rain for most of the night. But they couldn't find any zombies. It wasn't until dawn that the heavy rain finally stopped. The sun was shining brightly. The world that had been washed by the heavy rain for a night was exceptionally clear. The hunting group found some clues at this time. They found more than 100 pieces of clothes. As for other clues, they found nothing. The base chief gathered all the people who were caught last night. First, he gave them a physical examination to confirm that they were not infected with the virus. Then he questioned them one by one. A woman recalled the situation last night. She seemed to still have some lingering fear. She said in a trembling voice, "At that time, I was caught by the zombie and kept running in the rain. But I don't know why, it suddenly threw me on the ground. I quickly got up and ran. I thought that I would be caught again after a few steps, but I didn't expect that it didn't catch up with me until I ran to the warehouse." Another man recalled the situation last night and said, "I was about the same. The zombie suddenly threw me down. I looked around, but it was dark and I couldn't see anything. I tried to run a few steps, but didn't see the zombie chasing after me, so I quickly hid in the training room." What the others said was basically the same. From the moment they were thrown away, no one had seen a single zombie. It was as if those zombies had all evaporated in an instant. But what's with these scraps of cloth? The base chief frowned as he looked at the tattered pieces of clothing in front of him. It looked like there was a bomb in the zombies' bodies that suddenly exploded. However, no matter how much he exploded, he should have at least found some flesh and bones. However, even after searching the entire neighborhood, they could not find even a single piece of meat or bone. This puzzled everyone in the base. Now, it seemed that the zombies in the northeast had launched a large-scale attack just to attract the attention of the base. It was so that the zombies could easily sneak into the base and capture the humans. But why did these powerful mutated zombies suddenly disappear? There were also pieces of cloth left on the ground. No matter how good a person was at reasoning, they would not be able to figure it out even if they scratched their heads. At the same time, on the sentry tower by the wall in the southeast corner of the base, a zombie hunter was using binoculars to observe the outside of the wall. At a certain moment, his eyes suddenly focused. He saw that 100 meters away from the wall, under a big tree, a little girl was lying there. The zombie hunter's heart skipped a beat. He took a closer look. He saw that there seemed to be a hole in the back of the girl's head. He quickly reported this discovery to his superiors. Not long after, a few hunters came to the outside of the wall. They brought the little girl's body back. At this time, everyone realized that this was not a little girl, but a little zombie. When the lowly zombie's corpse was brought into the encirclement, a soldier suddenly yelled out, "It's her!" Everyone looked at the soldier. The soldier strode to the little zombie's body. He turned his head back with some excitement and said to the other soldiers, "Do you remember that I told you last night that I seemed to see a little girl standing on the wall? It's her." Hearing this, the soldiers were also surprised. "Yes, we didn't believe it at that time." The soldier said again, "At that time, although it was just a flash of lightning and I didn't see it clearly, I saw that she was wearing this. And at that time, I saw a long thorn more than 1 meter long on the back of her head, and she was about to jump out. From the looks of it, it shouldn't be some sort of thorn. Instead, it should be something that pierced her head." Hearing this, the hunters hurriedly reported this to their superiors. In the end, the chief of the base received the news and rushed over. He invited a few experts to analyze the holes left on the big tree outside, the holes on the little zombie's head, and combined with what the soldier said, they roughly reconstructed the situation at that time. However, the experts were somewhat in disbelief. The chief of the base saw that something was wrong. He asked, "What's wrong?" An expert pushed his glasses and said, "Chief, we don't dare to say anything." The chief of the base said, "If you have something to say, just say it." The expert with glasses glanced at the other experts, and the other experts nodded. The expert with glasses then said, "According to the situation at the scene, combined with the soldier's description, we speculated that when the zombie climbed over the wall and wanted to jump out of the base, someone threw a javelin from about 5 kilometers away and pierced through her head. Moreover, the huge inertia of the javelin carried it 100 meters away and nailed it to the tree outside. But the javelin was pulled out later." Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. This was too ridiculous. A hunter shook his head. Throwing a javelin from 5 kilometers away? Although any hunter can do it, who would have the accuracy to do it? Another hunter added, "Besides, the javelin flew for 5 kilometers and carried a zombie for 100 meters. How much strength does it take to do that? Even the level 5 hunter Hao Ren can't do that." The other experts nodded. The expert with glasses pushed his glasses again and said, "That's why we didn't dare to say anything. Because we think that this result is too ridiculous." But according to the analysis of the scene, it was like that at that time. The chief of the base frowned. At some point, he suddenly remembered what Xianxia said before. When Xianxia and the others came back, they reported that they always felt that there was a strong person ahead of them. This strong person killed a lot of zombies and mutated beasts along the way, but they didn't hear any sounds of fighting. Later, he specially ordered all the psychokinesis to secretly investigate the entire base several times. But they didn't find any strong person at all. But now, it seemed that there really was a mysterious strong person in the base. Chapter 104. While everyone in Base C2 was confused by what had happened last night, Lin Fan and the others were still in a daze. In the east of the base, more than 100 kilometers away, there was an abandoned city. This abandoned city was very different from other abandoned cities. Half of the buildings in the entire city were factories. But the most important difference was that the plants here were not green, but a faint blood-red color. The weeds on the ground, the big trees by the road, and the vines hanging down from the roof were all a faint blood-red color. Under the sunlight, the entire city looked very strange. Before the outbreak of the virus, this was once an important industrial base. But who would have thought that this was the source of the virus outbreak? The X2 virus started here and swept the world. At this time, in a factory, hundreds of zombies were standing in the open space of the factory. Among them was a little lowly zombie with the left side of her face drooping. A zombie with a beard stood on the corridor of the second floor, looking down at the more than 100 zombies. On the shelf next to him, there was a strange owl about 2 meters tall squatting. The owl had no skin on its whole body. The bloody flesh was exposed to the air. A pair of wings was like a bat, tucked behind its back. The bearded zombie let out a roar from his throat. "You all deserve to die. How could you fail?" The other zombies did not dare to say a word. Only the little lowly zombie responded with a roar from her throat. "Leader, we don't know what happened. We have attracted all the attention in the base as you ordered. My sister brought other zombies and successfully sneaked into the base. But I suddenly received news that my sister was killed. I saw from afar that she was nailed to a tree by a black javelin. Despicable humans, despicable reptiles." Speaking of this, the little lowly zombie's gray-white eyes showed a hint of hatred. The bearded zombie roared. "You mean, in this base, there is a human whose strength is far stronger than a level 5 strong mutated zombie?" The little lowly zombie roared in a low voice in response, "It's very possible." At this time, the mutated owl next to him turned its blood-red eyes. It made a low hiss in its throat. "Leader, if there really is such a powerhouse among the humans, it will be very troublesome. We have to find a way to deal with him." The bearded zombie nodded. "Do you have any ideas?" The variant owl said in a hoarse voice, "This is the source of the virus. All the zombies and mutated beasts here are much stronger than those in other places. If we can set up a trap and lure that human expert over." The bearded zombie pondered for a moment and roared, "You think of a way." The mutant owl flapped its wings and screeched, "Yes, Chief." In Base C2. Unable to find out the whole story for the time being, the leader could only give up for now. Everyone returned to their posts and continued working. However, in the leader's heart, he was secretly guessing who that mysterious expert was. Over the next few days, the materials for the base's corpse farm were almost ready. Under Emosher's guidance, they began to build the corpses. Howren also brought a few hunters to help. With the help of the zombie hunters, their progress was very fast. In a short span of 5 days, the entire hunting ground had been built. Later, they caught a few zombies and brought back a dozen pigs. Emosher brought a few disciples and taught them how to feed the zombies and what to pay attention to. In fact, as long as they were brave, careful, and had hands, they could feed the zombies. Therefore, these disciples quickly learned how to feed the zombies. In this way, Emosher became the leader of the corpse farm. However, as the leader, he was completely a hands-off boss. Almost everything was handed over to his disciples to handle. He himself was very free. He either strolled around the base or lay on the recliner in the yard to bask in the sun. At the same time, the laboratory on the other side was also being built. However, the construction of the laboratory was not as smooth as the corpse farm. The precision instruments needed by the laboratory were all rare goods nowadays. There was also a shortage of researchers. In desperation, the leader of the base could only send a few helicopters to other bases to see if he could borrow the instruments and talents. Emosher did not care much about these. He was secretly planning in his heart. Ordinary zombies did not have any memories. He had to catch a few mutated zombies back to inquire about the situation in the dragon ruins. On this day, Emosher received a piece of news from Howren. Last night, 2 people were taken away by strong mutated zombies. Howren sighed and said, You have to close the doors and windows when you sleep at night. Emosure joked, "That is a strong mutated zombie, what's the use of closing the doors and windows?" Hao Ren smiled bitterly, "It's better than being seen by a strong mutated zombie. In short, you have to be careful at night." For the next 5 days, although the base strengthened its security. However, there were strong mutated zombies in every corner of the base. However, these strong mutated zombies did not come in groups. They acted alone. The strength of a strong mutated zombie was equivalent to a hunter. With such strength, acting alone at night, it was basically impossible to be discovered. This also made the people in the base feel uneasy. Every day, they were on tenterhooks. Everyone was worried that they would be suddenly taken away at night. Compared to this, the leader of the base was more worried about what these zombies were going to do with so many humans. Moreover, these strong mutated zombies were almost treating the base as their backyard, and they could enter and leave at will. What if one day they did not just take away 1 or 2 people, but directly started to infect? The consequences would be unimaginable. Moving the people to the underground shelter was of course a way. However, the underground shelter's capacity was limited. At most, it could only accommodate 1/10 of the humans in the base. What about the remaining 9/10? Because of this, the leader of the base had been so worried that he had not slept for a few days. On this day, it was night again. The leader of the base had sent out all the members of the hunting group to patrol various positions in the base. However, they did not expect that after the members of the hunting group left, the area around the base was empty. Around 3 o'clock that night, the moon was not bright, but the stars were bright. The light wind swayed the leaves. A level 4 strong mutated zombie quietly approached the hunter group. He faced the wind and stretched his nose. He could smell the scent of many humans in the apartment building next to the hunting group. A hint of excitement flashed through his grayish-white pupils. Then he planned to break into a room on the first floor. However, at this moment, the level 4 strong mutated zombie suddenly felt that something was wrong. When he turned his head, he saw that a human was standing behind him. Chapter 105. The level 4 strong mutant zombie was about to jump into the apartment building to catch the person. But at a certain moment, its footsteps suddenly stopped. It suddenly turned around. It saw that behind it, there was a human standing there unknowingly. Its eyes suddenly flashed with a touch of horror. As a level 4 strong mutant zombie, its perception was also very strong. Not to mention humans, even if a flea appeared within 10 meters of it, it would be able to sense it easily. But at this time, this human quietly appeared behind it, and it actually did not feel anything. If it did not have a sense of danger in its heart, it would not have known that this person appeared. It could be seen that this human strength was far beyond its own. Thinking of this, the strong mutant zombie did not hesitate. It turned around and wanted to escape. However, just as it turned around, its mind suddenly went blank. In the next moment, its eyes turned from lively to dull, as if it was an idiot without any intelligence. At this time, except for the fact that its body was far stronger than ordinary zombies, and its speed and strength were far superior to ordinary zombies, in other aspects, it was no different from an ordinary zombie. At this time, Emosure sensed that not far away, there was a level 4 hunter from the body hunters coming over. With a thought, he activated Zombie Summon. He issued an order to the zombie. The zombie suddenly roared, turned around the corner, and rushed towards the member of the body hunters. However, without self-consciousness, the strong mutant zombie, which only had a bloodthirsty instinct, was no match for the level 4 hunter. In a few rounds, it was defeated by the level 4 hunter. Emosure thought to himself, this zombie summon is not bad. After obtaining this skill, he almost never used it. Now, he was just trying out this skill. At this time, the level 4 hunter killed the strong mutant zombie. The movement here also attracted the attention of the others. They all rushed over here. This was the first time they successfully killed a strong mutant zombie in the base. The other members of the hunter group congratulated the hunter. Amazing, my brother. You are the first to kill a strong mutant zombie in the base. Who said that our base is the backyard of their strong mutant zombies? Didn't we just kill one? The hunter nodded and responded to the crowd. However, he was secretly muttering in his heart. Although this zombie's speed and strength had reached the level of a level 4 strong mutation, it was still a level 4 mutant. But he still felt that something was off. He took him down in a few moves. Under normal circumstances, this was simply impossible. However, he only muttered in his heart and did not say it out loud. At this moment, Immortal had already returned to his room. In his mind, he was looking through the memories that he had just plundered. The memory plunder skill could be used on humans, zombies, and mutant beasts. It was quite useful. From these memories, Immortal learned that there was a city full of blood-red plants 100 kilometers away. That was the origin of the virus. He also knew that the strongest person there was a level 10 mutated zombie. Other than that, there were also several level 9 mutated zombies. More than a dozen level 8 mutated zombies. As for the strong mutant zombies below level 7, there were more than 3,000 of them. And the number of mutated zombies reached more than 100,000. The remaining 2 million were all ordinary zombies. When Immortal discovered this, he couldn't help but feel a little surprised. The strength of the zombies in this city was actually so strong. What made him puzzled was that the strength of these zombies could easily break through the C2 base. Why hadn't they made a move yet? Adhering to the principle of not thinking about it if he couldn't figure it out, Immortal no longer bothered about this. What he thought in his heart was, according to the information he had obtained now, there were no super mutated zombies in that city. Then things would be easy to handle. Destroying the zombies in this city would give him tens of millions of evolution points. Then, if he continued to head east, not far away would be the Dragon Ruins. He would definitely be able to sign in and get good things in that city. Immortal couldn't help but look forward to it. However, it was obvious that he couldn't go tonight. He had just checked too many memories of that strong mutated zombie, and his head was a little swollen. He should wait until tomorrow night to adjust to his peak state. Thinking of this, Immortal didn't sign in immediately. Instead, he planned to leave this signing opportunity for tomorrow night. That day, Immortal slept for almost half a day. Around 10 o'clock at night, he changed into the chameleon camouflage uniform. The color of his body changed into the same black as the night. The camouflage uniform also turned black. When he jumped out of the window and entered the night, his whole person blended into the night. Soon he leaped over 3 walls. With Immortal's current strength, coupled with the chameleon camouflage uniform, even if he passed by 4 or 5 meters away from the soldiers guarding the wall, they would only feel a gust of wind blowing past. They couldn't see Immortal at all. After exiting the first wall and entering the forest, Immortal let go of his hands and feet and rushed towards the east. 1 kilometer per step. 100 kilometers, only 100 steps. Of course, because of the difference in terrain, climbing mountains and wading through rivers, a little time was wasted. But even so, it only took him 5 minutes to reach. At this time, he arrived at the edge of the city. Under the support of the blood-red demon pupil, he looked towards the city. He saw that the entire city was shrouded in a thick corpse aura. The corpse aura was so thick that it could almost solidify. Before the outbreak of the virus X, there were 2 million people in this city. Obviously, these 2 million people had all been turned into zombies. However, Immortal didn't have the slightest fear of this. With his strength, he could do whatever he wanted in this city. He slowed down his footsteps. He entered the city from the highway toll station in the west. Around the toll station, there were more than a dozen zombies working as toll collectors. Like lonely ghosts, they wandered on the overgrown road. After more than 20 years, their clothes had long been weathered. Some only had a few pieces of cloth hanging on their bodies. Some of them were completely naked. Their greenish-black bodies were already shriveled like air-dried bacon. A few zombies were lying on the ground or sitting in the corner, motionless. They seemed to have been dead for a long time. When Immortal walked over, those zombies suddenly looked like wolves who had been hungry for more than 10 days and saw a lamb. They roared and pounced towards Immortal. Even the zombies who were lying on the ground and sitting in the corner of the room were not affected. At this time, they slowly got up and pounced towards Immortal. They looked very ferocious. However, when they were more than 10 meters away from Immortal, their bodies had already exploded. Bang 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 bang. They exploded into broken limbs and broken bodies on the ground. Soon, the movement here attracted other zombies not far away, and they all rushed here. In just more than 10 minutes, the surrounding zombies had reached more than 1,000. Immortal faced these more than 1,000 zombies and slowly moved forward. He spread out his telekinesis. All the zombies that came within 1,000 meters of him exploded. Bang 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 bang. Chapter 106. In the clear night sky, the stars were bright. Under this starry sky, in a city covered by blood-red plants, Immortal slowly moved forward, and his body was like a magnet. Tens of thousands of zombies were attracted to him from all directions, and they rushed towards him. Looking down from the sky, it would feel that Immortal was like a lonely boat surrounded by a flood. It would be destroyed in the blink of an eye. However, the reality was that when those zombies entered a radius of 1,000 meters, their bodies strangely exploded. Bang 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 bang. Whether it was ordinary zombies, mutated zombies, or strong mutated zombies. Without exception, all of them exploded into several pieces and flew far away. Looking down from the sky, one would see that Immortal's surroundings formed a huge circle with a radius of 1,000 meters. None of the zombies could enter the circle. The circle slowly moved forward. Behind it was a huge corpse belt that was 2,000 meters wide. This corpse belt was covered with broken limbs and body parts. It was like hell. Immortal did not shake these corpses into powder. After all, if that was the case, it would consume more energy than now. There were 2 million zombies in this city. If they were all shaken into powder, his telekinesis might not be able to hold on. Of course, he was also very cautious. Occasionally, he would let in a strong mutated zombie, plunder their memories, to compare information, thus to prevent any negligence. In his mind, there was a constant notification: frowny face killed zombie, evolution points +1, killed level 3 mutated zombie, evolution points +300, killed level 2 strong mutated zombie, evolution points +2000. In the beginning, he was a little excited for a while. But as time passed, his mind was constantly refreshed. He was already numb. At the same time, at the top of a 13-story building in the center of the city, a bearded zombie and 5 other level 9 strong mutated zombies were watching all of this from afar. Their eyes were filled with shock. Beside them, a huge mutated owl flashed a cold light in its blood-red eyes. A level 9 mutant zombie roared in his throat, "Let's go! There is actually such a strong person among the humans." Another level 9 mutant zombie roared, "Let's go! Previously, we said that we were going to attack the human base. Fortunately, the king did not send an order. Otherwise, it didn't continue, but the other mutated zombies knew what it meant. Indeed, if they had rashly attacked the base, they would probably be dead by now." The owl beside him screeched hoarsely and said, "Although this human is powerful, as long as we lure him to the blood pool, we can kill him." The bearded zombie withdrew his shocked gaze and nodded. "The blood pool is what we're relying on. Are you guys ready?" The mutant zombies nodded. "All right." The bearded zombie nodded. "Then let's go." Then he said to the mutant owl beside him, "You once said that he had killed a level 10 strong mutated zombie?" The owl said hoarsely, "Yes, Chief. But don't worry, the situation this time is different. This is where the virus originated. Here, the human strength would be weakened. The strength of the zombies and mutant beasts will be greatly enhanced." The bearded zombie nodded. "Yes, you should go too." The owl said respectfully, "Yes, Chief." Then a pair of bat-like wings stretched out, flapped them, and flew into the distance. When Immortal was moving forward, his speed was not fast at first. He would catch a strong mutated zombie from time to time to scout for information. A moment later, through the memory of a strong mutated zombie, he found a piece of news that made him slightly surprised. these zombies actually set up a trap to lure him to kill him. The reason why those strong mutated zombies went to the base every night to catch humans, one reason was that they did catch humans for other purposes. Another important reason was to lure him here. At this time, in this city, these zombies had already set up a trap, waiting for him to jump in. However, Immortal had already investigated their plan clearly through the memory of this strong mutated zombie. He couldn't help but laugh. In the face of absolute strength, any conspiracy is a joke. After finding out everything he needed, he began to speed up. The speed of those zombies being killed also became faster and faster. The speed of the evolution points in his mind also became faster and faster. About 20 minutes later, he had already swept through half of the city. And at this time, those zombies seemed to have learned to be smart. Especially those strong mutated zombies. After they saw Immortal, they no longer blindly rushed forward. Instead, they fled to the foot of the mountain to the east of the city. Even hundreds of strong mutated zombies fled in that direction. Immortal couldn't help but laugh. They were clearly luring him to go there. Alright, since it's like this, then I'll do as you wish. A moment later, following these strong mutated zombies, he arrived at the foot of the mountain. At this time, Immortal looked at the evolution points in his mind. He had already gained more than 10 million evolution points from the killing just now. Now the total evolution points had already reached 73 million. As long as he eliminated all the zombies in the city, reaching 20 million would not be a problem. He estimated that as long as he reached 100 million evolution points, the system should be able to upgrade again. He shifted his attention from his mind to the outside world. At the foot of the mountain, there were more than 30 factories. Immortal did not immediately go in. Instead, he took out the virtual sentry tower and placed it next to him. Just as the virtual sentry tower was set up, an urgent alarm sounded. Beep, 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 beep. However, Immortal only used his telekinesis to scan once and did not pay attention to the alarm. Under his telekinesis investigation, those 30 factories, in each courtyard, there was a blood pool with a diameter of 50 meters. Around these blood pools, there were more than 3,000 strong mutated zombies, all of them jumping in. Seeing this, Immortal smiled indifferently. More than 3,000 strong mutated zombies, even with the bonus of the blood pool, it was impossible for them to break through to super mutated zombies. As long as they could not break through to super mutated zombies, they were all ants in front of him. No, they should all be evolution points. Thinking of this, he took a step forward and arrived at a factory. He saw in the blood pool in the factory courtyard. There were about 100 zombies. However, at this time, these zombies' bodies and faces were covered with finger-thick blood-red arms. From a distance, these blood-red arms were like blood vessels, crawling all over these zombies' bodies. And these zombies' bodies quickly became taller and bigger. Soon, almost every zombie reached a height of more than 20 meters. Their strength had basically reached level 8 or even level 9 strong mutated zombies. Among them, there were even a few strong mutated zombies that reached a height of 50 meters. Their strength had already reached level 10 strong mutated zombies. Immortal used his telekinesis to scan. In all the blood pools, all 3,000 strong mutated zombies had reached level 8 and above. There were also more than 30 50-meter tall level 10 strong mutated zombies. In addition, there were also more than 1,000 strong mutated beasts in the blood pool. The strength of each strong mutated beast, under the support of the blood pool, also reached level 8 and above. If such a force wanted to crush those bases, none of them would be able to last more than 10 minutes. Chapter 107. Strong mutant zombies and mutant beasts above level 8 were equivalent to hunters above level 8. Any one of them could give any base a headache. But now, there were more than 4,000 of them gathered here. These more than 4,000 strong mutant zombies and mutant beasts, each of them mutated in an extremely strange way. Some of their faces and buttocks were in opposite positions. Some of their heads were big meatballs with 7 or 8 human faces inside. Some had a wolf's body and a human's head. There was even one with a pouch on its stomach. Little zombies kept jumping out of the pouch. Every little zombie was a level 5 strong mutant zombie. Emoshur opened his eyes. In addition to these, there were more than 30 level 10 strong mutant zombies and more than 10 level 10 strong mutant beasts. Every one of them was 50 meters tall or long. Their faces were ferocious and extremely ugly. Among them, the strongest mutant beast was already more than 80 meters tall. There were 2 thick horns about 10 meters long on its head. There was a huge bloody hole in its chest. Emoshur's blood demon's pupils saw that the corpse aura on its body was the heaviest. Obviously, its strength should have already reached level 10 strong mutated zombie. Now, with the support of the blood pool, it had reached the limit of level 10 strong mutant zombie. Only one step, it could become a super mutant zombie. Right now, Emoshur was facing more than 4,000 hunters who were level 8 and above. It was certain that in the face of such a terrifying force, there was no hunter group in the world that could resist it. However, at this time, Emoshur was facing such a terrifying existence alone. Roar! The 80-meter-tall zombie roared. The rest of the 3,000-strong mutant zombies, as if they had received an order, rushed toward Emoshur together. The 1,000-strong mutant beasts also made a variety of hoarse, loud, and sharp roars. They rushed toward the apocalypse. The surrounding factory buildings, walls, and the units across the street. Everything under their feet was like a piece of paper, collapsing one after another. Facing these strong mutant zombies that were supported by the blood pool, Emoshur's telekinesis couldn't tear them into pieces. It couldn't explode their heads. He shook his head slightly and sighed. Since that's the case, I'll use this move. Then he closed his eyes. The immense power of a level 10 telekinesis spread out brazenly. Almost instantaneously, his telekinesis enveloped every strong mutant beast and zombie. Moreover, it wasn't just a shroud. His telekinesis seemed to have a spirituality. After enveloping the bodies of these zombies and mutant beasts, it quickly moved around their bodies, looking for their weaknesses. A level 10 strong mutated zombie, whose cervical vertebra was almost cut off by a human with a knife. Although it had been strengthened by the blood pool, there was still a small gap on its neck. At the same time, its foot had been fractured. Emoshur's telekinesis quickly found these 2 weaknesses. In the next moment, he exerted force in several directions. Rip! This level 10 mutant zombie was torn into pieces in an instant. At the same time, around Emoshur, the remaining 3,000 strong mutant zombies and 1,000 strong mutant beasts were also experiencing the same thing. Rip, 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 at almost the same time. They were all torn apart, including the 80-meter-tall strong mutant zombie. Even all the trees, stones, and factories within a radius of 1,000 meters were torn into pieces. Flesh and blood accompanied by dust flew all over the sky. What was even more abnormal was that the ground within a radius of 1,000 meters was torn apart inch by inch. As for those blood pools, naturally, they couldn't escape the fate of being torn apart. The blood in the blood pools flowed along the cracks and quickly flowed away. The thousands of small arms in the blood pools that were like blood vessels also quickly retracted back to the ground. Tear of Doomsday. The power of a tear was actually so terrifying. In the face of Tear of Doomsday, there was nothing that couldn't be solved with a tear. The only way to avoid it was to have a stronger telekinesis than Emoshur. But now on Earth, was there any creature stronger than Emoshur's telekinesis? The answer was no. So, from this point of view, Emoshur could be said to be invincible at this time. At the top of a building in the distance. The mutant owl's eyes were originally cold, and it had been paying attention to Emoshur's every move. It seemed to have seen that Emoshur was about to be torn into pieces by the more than 4,000 mutant creatures. However, at this moment, its blood-red eyes were filled with shock. Was this human already so strong? He directly used his telekinesis to tear apart the more than 4,000 strong mutant creatures that had been strengthened by the blood pool. Even the trees, stones, and buildings were torn apart. Even the ground was torn apart with cracks. This human was simply more beastly than us beasts. Thinking of this, it didn't dare to stay for even a second longer. It flapped a pair of bat-like wings and was about to fly into the distance. However, at this moment, whoosh, puff, a ray of black light instantly attacked. It directly pierced through the mutant owl's head. Then, he brought the mutated owl over 100 meters and nailed it to the roof of another building. A moment later, Immortal's figure suddenly appeared beside the mutant owl's corpse. Previously, he had noticed a corpse aura on the roof of the distant building. Although this corpse aura wasn't considered strong, it was only a level 1 mutant beast, but it gave him a sense of familiarity. It seemed that he had seen this corpse aura at the broken bridge at the dam outside the C1 base. Later, when he was at the C9 base, he also saw this corpse aura. Now, it was the third time he had seen it. Then, he took a closer look and found that it was a mutant owl. He immediately used the Sky Splitter Dragon Spear to kill it. At this moment, he came to the mutant owl's corpse and used his telekinesis to carefully examine it. He found that there seemed to be something wrong with the mutant owl's heart. It was clearly an owl, but it had a human heart. The heart was as shriveled as air-dried bacon. After carefully examining it for a moment, he couldn't find anything. He shook his head. He used his telekinesis. Bang! The owl's corpse exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Including the shriveled heart, it also exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Then he stayed here for a full 5 minutes. Seeing that nothing strange happened, he rubbed his temples that were swollen due to the excessive consumption of telekinesis. He leaped and jumped in the direction of the remaining zombies. However, there was nothing strange about the owl, but there was something strange about the 80-meter-tall zombie. The flesh and blood in its body wriggled. Its bones were also constantly cracking. After a moment, it actually gathered into a strong mutant zombie that was more than 20 meters tall. Then, it jumped out of the previous corpse and hurriedly fled to the east. Immortal, who was cleaning up the zombies, detected this. However, he only glanced in that direction and didn't pay attention to it anymore. Obviously, after the zombie got out of the corpse, it should have gone to the dragon ruins. It just so happened that he was going to the dragon ruins later. He would let it run for a few kilometers first. Chapter 108. For the time being, Immortal didn't pay attention to the strong variant zombie. He continued to use his telekinesis to harvest the remaining zombies in the city. Another 20 minutes later, finally, the 2 million zombies in the city were cleared. At this time, the city was completely quiet. It was as silent as death. Even the chirping of the insects had disappeared. More than 2 million zombies were torn apart, filling the entire city with a layer of blood mist. This kind of blood mist was not corpse gas. Corpse gas only appeared on the bodies of living zombies or mutated beasts. It was not visible to the human eye. But this layer of blood mist could be seen with the naked eye. The strong smell of blood went straight into Immortal's nostrils. At the same time, the evolution points in his mind finally stopped increasing. He estimated that he could get more than 10 million evolution points in this city. But the strong mutated beasts and zombies in the blood pool were all very high-leveled. Just there alone, he gained 35 million evolution points. In addition to the other mutated zombies and ordinary zombies, he gained more than 46 million evolution points. In addition to the 73 million from before, his current total evolution points had reached 73 million. It was not far from 100 million. Immortal rubbed his swollen and painful temples. He took out 2 bottles of brain cell recovery medicine and drank them. After a while, he felt a cool and comfortable feeling in his head. The swelling and painful feeling quickly eased. In just 5 minutes, the swelling and pain in his temples had completely disappeared. His telekinesis had already recovered to its peak state. Then he said in his mind, "System, sign in. Sign in successful. Sign in event, kill 2 million zombies. Sign in reward, zombie puppet." Immortal looked at the skill description. Zombie puppet, using the flesh and blood of zombies to condense into a zombie puppet. The more flesh and blood of zombies, the more zombie puppets condensed, and the stronger they will be. The strongest can reach level 10 strong mutated zombies. Emo nodded. This skill was not bad. In some cases, when he couldn't do it himself, he could let the puppet do it for him. After doing this, he came to a school. With a sweep of his telekinesis, he found that there were a total of 30 humans in the 15 classrooms of the school. Apparently, these humans were the ones that the zombies had captured from the base. There were 2 people in each classroom, 1 male and 1 female. Through the memories he had plundered, Emo learned the reason why the zombies had locked those people up. They actually wanted to use these humans to reproduce. If zombies don't eat meat for a long time, their bodies will slowly dry up. Even strong mutant zombies were no exception. It's just that strong mutated zombies can last longer than ordinary zombies. Therefore, these zombies had already started experimenting with raising human beings in captivity. If their experiment was successful, it would spread throughout the wastelands. Keep all humans in captivity and let them breed. That way, the zombies would have an endless supply of food. Emo was also secretly surprised. These zombies were getting smarter and smarter. It seemed that he had to break through his limits as soon as possible and increase his strength. He activated his telekinesis and blasted open the door of the classroom where the humans were locked. Then he ignored these humans. Zombie puppet skill was activated. The flesh and blood of the surrounding zombies suddenly seemed to be alive and began to wriggle. Then, many thin hair-like tentacles grew on these flesh and blood. The tentacles between every 2 pieces of flesh and blood intertwined with each other and pulled the 2 pieces of flesh together, forming a piece of flesh and blood. After a while, the flesh and blood within 1,000 meters condensed into a huge zombie that was 80 meters tall. This zombie had a pair of thick horns that were 10 meters long. There were 6 arms on its body. Its 2 legs were like the trunk of a giant tree. It looked exactly the same as the strongest level 10 strong mutant zombie that he had seen before. Emo looked with the blood demon's eye. He saw that the zombie puppet's corpse aura was exactly the same as the 80-meter-tall strong evolved zombie that he had killed before. At the same time, the zombie puppet's level also appeared in his mind. Species, zombie puppet, level 10 strong mutant zombie. A smile appeared on Emo's face. He activated his telekinesis. This level 10 strong mutant zombie ran quickly towards the east. Boom, boom, boom. Every time this guy ran, the ground seemed to tremble. Emo followed behind it from a distance. With this big guy in front of him, there would be a lot less danger. Not long after he left. In the education of the abandoned school, the 30 humans saw the classroom door that suddenly flew in. All of them were frightened. Several women almost all cried out. They had been captured for several days. Those zombies did not kill them, nor did they eat them. Instead, they sent some wild mountain fruits, meat, and canned food that had been stored for a long time. This made them feel even more strange. They had always heard that zombies ate humans. When had they ever seen zombies serving humans? Tonight, the zombies in the entire city were roaring. At the foot of the mountain in the distance, there were constant roars that shook the sky. It was as if the zombies in the entire city had rioted. This caused them to be filled with terror. At this time, the door was blasted open, and they were all completely desperate. Those zombies were finally going to attack them. In front of these powerful zombies, they were completely lambs waiting to be slaughtered. They could already imagine the scene of them being torn to pieces. This made their hearts tremble and their bodies tremble. Many people were so scared that they were paralyzed on the ground, unable to move at all. But after a full 5 minutes, there was no more movement outside. There was no scene of zombies rushing in as they had imagined. 2 bold men quietly poked their heads out to take a look. The entire city was dead silent. Only the strong smell of blood went straight into their nostrils. They gathered their courage and went down the teaching building. Then they saw a scene that they would never forget. In the school, outside the school, on the road, broken limbs and body parts were almost everywhere. On the walls, on the ground, on the weeds, there were blood stains everywhere. The entire city was like hell. The few of them looked at each other. They all saw the shock and fear in each other's eyes. What exactly happened? All the zombies in the entire city were torn to pieces. Humans definitely did not have such terrifying strength. In panic, they quickly returned to the classroom and called out all the others. 30 people together fled out of the city. Since these zombies were all dead, they could take the opportunity to escape back to the base. Although this place was very far from the base, it was very likely that mutated beasts would appear on the road. But in this Azura-like city, they really could not stay any longer. This place was really too strange and too terrifying. At the same time, on the top of a building, the blood that had exploded into a ball did not dry up. Instead, many tentacles grew out. These tentacles slowly wriggled, entangled, and slowly connected together. Then, some flesh and blood grew on these tentacles. After a full half an hour, a fist-sized, dry heart condensed. Then, all the tentacles on the surface of the heart retracted into the heart. The whole dry heart lay on the roof, motionless, as if waiting for some unlucky mutated beast to come one day. Chapter 109. At night, the stars were shining brightly. In the wilderness, a human and a zombie were running quickly towards the east. The zombie was 80 meters tall and was definitely a giant. Behind him was a human with light footsteps. Such a pair was running in the wilderness. The scene was absolutely strange. At this time, Immortal had already run for more than 30 kilometers to the east. The scene around him gradually changed. All the plants had turned blood red again. And the further he went, the heavier the blood red color became. On the ground, some blood red vines would occasionally appear. At first, Immortal thought that these were just ordinary vines that had been stained with blood red. However, when he passed by, those blood red vines seemed to be faintly moving. He couldn't help but slow down his pace. Although from the memories of those zombies, he knew that there were at most level 10 mutated zombies in the dragon ruins. Nothing could pose a threat to him. But he still had to be careful. He walked forward for another few kilometers. The trees and grass around him had already turned blood red. The sanguisurincus on the ground gradually became thicker. They were already as thick as a human's arm. When Immortal passed by, those sanguisurincus would actually be like snakes, constantly probing towards him. It seemed that they wanted to entangle him. Immortal exhaled. He had to take off his camouflage uniform. With a thought, a crack quickly appeared between the shoulder blades on his back. A pair of bat-like wings stretched out from the crack. And they grew with the wind, quickly growing to a width of 5 meters. Then, with a flap of the wings, he flew into the air. On the ground, those snake-like sanguisurincus couldn't entangle Immortal and could only retreat to the ground. Immortal looked at the pair of blood-red wings and then looked at his naked upper body. He sighed helplessly. This pair of wings looked very cool. But if he had to take off his clothes every time he stretched out, it would make people feel very uncomfortable. Those who knew would understand that he was about to spread his wings and fly. Those who didn't know would think that he was trying to do something. Immortal flapped his wings and continued flying towards the east. On the ground, the zombie puppet strode towards the east. The sanguisurincus on the ground wouldn't attack the zombie puppet. More than 10 minutes later, the zombie puppet brought Immortal to the dragon ruins without a hitch. Immortal took out the map and compared it with the surrounding landscape. He couldn't help but feel a little excited. This was the dragon ruins marked on the map. However, at this moment, he looked down at the ground. All the plants in the surroundings were so red that they looked like they could drip blood. Sanguisurincus as thick as thighs crisscrossed the ground. Even the ground had turned blood red. The air was filled with a bloody mist. It looked like a blood-red world. His gaze followed the sanguisurincus on the ground. 1,000 meters ahead, there was a huge stadium. But at this time, the walls of this huge stadium had turned blood red. Thick sanguisurincus were crawling on the walls. What surprised Immortal the most was that there were hundreds of huge sarcomas growing on the entire stadium. They completely covered the sky above the stadium. It was as if hundreds of huge sarcoma-shaped ceilings had been placed over the stadium. The surface of these sarcomas was covered with sanguisurincus with a diameter of more than 1 meter. Every sarcoma was like a human heart. They would actually beat once every 10 seconds. It was Immersive's first time seeing such a thing. There were hundreds of strong mutated zombies around the stadium. They surrounded the huge sarcomas. It was as if they were protecting it. Immersive's pupils turned blood red as he looked at the huge sarcomas. A line of words appeared in his mind: frowny face virus hive. The foundation of all mutated creatures, the complete body of the blood pool. Every virus hive has its own consciousness. All virus hives in the world have the same consciousness. It turned out that those blood pools could grow. When they grew to a certain extent, they would become virus hives. What surprised Immersive the most was that this virus hive actually had its own consciousness. And the consciousness of all the virus hives in the world could be connected. That was amazing. The virus hives in the southern hemisphere could directly know the situation of the virus hives in the northern hemisphere. Immersive glanced at the map in his hand. He couldn't help but curse. F***ck, the location of the virus hive actually coincided with the location of the dragon ruins. In other words, this virus hive was built on the dragon ruins. He tried to use his telekinesis to explore the virus hive. As a result, he discovered that his telekinesis could only detect the surface of the virus hive at most. There seemed to be a barrier on its surface. His telekinesis couldn't explore it at all. Immersive shook his head. It seemed that he could only let his zombie puppets explore it. This virus hive was formed in the stadium. However, the surrounding doors had been sealed by Sanguisurincus. If he wanted to enter, he would have to use brute force. However, if he used brute force, he would definitely be discovered by the strong mutant zombies guarding the virus hive. Fortunately, at this time, he saw one of the sarcomas squirming. Then, a strong mutant zombie jumped out from the sarcomas. I see. Immersive secretly said. Then, he controlled the level 10 strong mutant zombie and jumped onto the roof of the stadium. Then, it jumped directly into one of the sarcomas. After the zombie puppet jumped onto the sarcomas, it slowly sank in. A moment later, it completely passed through the sarcomas and entered the stadium. Immersive could see the situation in the virus hive through the zombie puppet's perspective. He saw that the entire virus hive was blood red. The stadium's former lawn, stands, corridors, railings. There was nothing that wasn't red, and it was covered with fine Sanguisurincus. If one looked carefully, they would find that these weren't Sanguisurincus at all, but formed by small arms. On the surrounding walls, through the dense Sanguisurincus, one could see thousands of human corpses. Some only revealed a twisted and ferocious face. The eyes on the face were still open. Some of them only had a broken arm or a leg that was riddled with holes. And some only revealed half of their buttocks. In the center of the stadium, there was a huge blood pool that occupied the entire stadium ground. It was different from the other blood pools. In the blood pool here, the blood was more viscous, as if it was about to solidify. In the blood pool, there were a few strong mutant zombies that were bathing. In the blood pool, there were constantly blood-red tentacles that climbed onto their bodies. Among them, there was the horned mutant zombie that had just escaped. These strong mutant zombies, one by one, saw the zombie puppet come in. Although they were a little surprised, they didn't investigate further. After all, in their view, this zombie puppet was their own kind. When the horned mutant saw the zombie puppet, its eyes revealed a look of surprise. How could this guy be exactly the same as itself? Under the easternmost stands of the stadium, there was a crack that was more than 1 meter wide and more than 10 meters long on the ground. Around the entire crack, there wasn't a trace of Sanguisurincus. The ground near the crack was also a normal khaki color. It looked out of place with the entire virus hive. When Immersive saw this crack, his heart moved. Could it be that this was the entrance to the dragon ruins? After pondering for a moment, he didn't immediately go in. Although there were no super mutant zombies here, it seemed very safe. But after all, it was the virus hive. It was better to be careful. It was best to let the zombie puppet take the risk first. Chapter 110. The location of the dragon ruins was called Inko. There was once a rumor of a dragon falling here. The Xinjiang Times once reported that in early July 1934, a live dragon was found lying on the shore and seemed to be injured. People used reed mats to set up a shelter and water it. A few days later, it was raining heavily and the dragon disappeared. On July 28, a dragon fell from the sky. It destroyed 3 ships, destroyed a factory, overturned a train, and killed 9 people. Later, people found the dragon 10 kilometers away from the estuary of the Liao River. Its scales filled 2 large baskets. Its voice was like a cow's cry before it died. After that, dragon bones were found several times. Mo sure remembered that the dragons described in these basic descriptions all looked like the Huaxia divine dragon. He didn't expect that there would be a dragon ruins of a Western dragon here. However, at this time, there was a virus hive above the dragon ruins. Mo sure had already explored everything in the hive through the zombie puppet's perspective. However, with his caution, he naturally couldn't directly kill his way in. Instead, he used his mind to order the zombie puppet to launch an attack. The zombie puppet received the order and didn't roar to the sky. In Mo sure's view, zombies and mutant beasts would roar a few times before each attack, as if they were afraid that others wouldn't know that they were going to attack. This was really stupid. Since they were going to attack, of course, they had to be unexpected and silent. Therefore, he ordered the zombie puppet not to make any sound before attacking. The zombie puppet could only forcibly suppress the urge to roar. It walked towards the blood pool. Then it jumped into the blood pool. It directly grabbed a strong mutant zombie. With a fierce force. Hiss! The strong mutant zombie was torn into 2 pieces. Then, it grabbed another strong mutant zombie. Hiss! That strong mutant zombie was also torn into 2 pieces. When the rest of the strong mutant zombies saw this, they all quickly jumped out of the blood pool in horror. Their grayish-white eyes were full of panic and doubt. Zombies would only kill each other when they were fighting for food. Other than that, they almost never fought with each other. Especially in the blood pool. All the zombies were in awe of the blood pool. When they were in the blood pool, they were all careful and didn't dare to make too much noise. But now, this zombie had torn apart 2 zombies, which made them angry and puzzled. Mo sure saw that these fellows did not even dare to resist in the blood pool. He couldn't help but smile. Since you don't resist, just lie down obediently and enjoy yourself. Then, his mind moved again. The zombie puppet rushed towards a nearby zombie and pounced on it. However, right at this moment, in the blood pool, a thick arm formed from thousands of tiny tentacles suddenly stretched out. He directly grabbed the zombie puppet's arm. The zombie puppet was also very tough. When one of its arms was grabbed, it stretched out its other arm, grabbed the arm, and pulled it hard. It actually tore off its own arm. A pale white bone could be seen at the fracture. Blood spurted out of his mouth. Even though zombies didn't feel any pain. Not to mention tearing off his arm, even if he were to cut off his little brother, he wouldn't even blink an eye. But with this tug, the scene was still unbearable to watch. Then, it pounced on the strong mutated zombie again. Anyway, it had 6 arms. Breaking 1 or 2 wouldn't affect it at all. It grabbed the strong mutated zombie. The strong mutated zombie was torn in half. It was also at this moment that the blood pool seemed to be angry. It kept churning, and the blood pool bubbled. In the next moment, hundreds of arms emerged from the blood pool. These arms quickly grabbed the zombie puppet's limbs and body. With a fierce force, the zombie puppet was directly torn into dozens of pieces. Blood rained down, and broken limbs flew. Mo sure sighed in his heart, those who tear people will be torn apart by others. But then he shook his head. If people really tore it apart, wouldn't he be in danger? In short, there was something strange in this blood pool. Then wouldn't it be fine if he stayed away from it? Thinking of this, Mo sure retracted his wings. From a height of 100 meters, he directly fell to the ground 100 meters away from the nest. Boom! The ground under his feet suddenly cracked inch by inch. A shockwave suddenly spread out. All the sanguisurincus on the ground within 50 meters were directly broken by the impact of his smash. Around the nest, the strong mutated zombies guarding the nest saw a human suddenly fall from the sky. They were all stunned. One had to know that this was the nest. It was almost impossible for a human to come here. Even a level 10 hunter among humans would be torn to pieces by the Sanguisurincus extended from the nest before they could get close to it. How did this human come here? But at this time, they didn't have time to think too much. Since a human dared to invade the nest, then die. Hundreds of strong mutated zombies had all reached level 10. As they roared, they pounced on Immortal. Immortal opened his mouth. Roar! A shocking roar came out from his throat. Bang 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 bang. Almost all the level 10 strong mutated zombies were halfway through pouncing. Then it exploded. Blood rained down, and broken limbs flew. This was the upgraded corpse roar technique. With a roar, as long as it was a strong mutated zombie below level 10, it could be directly killed. Immortal did not care about this. His eyes focused on the nest. At this time, there were already hundreds of Sanguisurincus as thick as a thigh, like a giant python, winding towards Immortal. Immortal did not care about these Sanguisurincus. His right arm quickly thickened. On his skin, black scales appeared. His right hand also turned into a sharp dragon claw. The next moment, he jumped and instantly rose into the air. While avoiding the Sanguisurincus, his right claw slashed down diagonally. Swish! An invisible force directly slashed towards the hundreds of sarcomas on the top of the nest. At this moment, the hundreds and thousands of Sanguisurincus that were attacking Immortal actually returned to the nest in an instant. Above the nest, they condensed into a shell of Sanguisurincus that was more than 10 meters thick. However, just as these Sanguisurincus shells were formed, the invisible force had already arrived. Chi 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 chi. The Sanguisurincus shells were like paper in front of the invisible force. 5 claw marks that were more than 10 meters wide were easily slashed out. All the Sanguisurincus suddenly withered and fell down weakly. At the same time, the invisible force continued to slash down. Chi, the entire huge nest was suddenly divided into two. A huge crack that was more than 50 meters wide appeared. More than 20 sarcomas happened to be cut by the invisible force. Boom, 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 boom. Blood flew all over the sky, sprinkling down. At the same time, the blood pool in the nest was also divided into two. 1,000-meter long, 50-meter wide, bottomless chasm split the blood pool into two halves. In the blood pool, a large amount of blood quickly flowed out along the crack. All the Sanguisurincus around the nest were trembling as if they were in extreme pain and quickly shriveled up. At this moment, the few strong mutated zombies in the nest were suddenly dumbfounded. They looked at the nest that was split in two in disbelief. They looked at the blood pool that was quickly losing blood. One of the zombies roared, "The blood pool is dead. The nest is dead." Especially the 20-meter tall mutant zombie with a pair of horns on its head. There was no fear in its eyes, only anger. This human had destroyed its city. He had destroyed the blood pools in its city. Now, even the nest was destroyed. This was too much. This was too much. In anger, it looked up to the sky and roared, roar, then, it pounced on Immortal. Immortal snorted coldly. The Titan's dragon claw swung again. Chi, the invisible force was released, and the body of the horned zombie was immediately cut into several pieces. At this point, the entire nest was destroyed. Chapter 111. The virus hive seemed very powerful, but its main function was to create powerful mutated zombies. It was actually just a huge building. At most, it had more Sanguisurincus than ordinary buildings, which could be used for attack and defense. But in front of Immortal, this little bit of defense was completely like paper. After splitting the hive with his claw, Immortal's eyes turned blood red. He looked at the hive with his blood-red demonic eyes. He saw that the zombie aura above the hive had gradually dissipated. Obviously, the hive and the blood pool inside, including those powerful mutated zombies, were all dead. Immortal used his telekinesis to condense another zombie puppet with the surrounding zombie flesh and blood. But this zombie puppet was only the height of a normal human. Immortal ordered in his mind, Go to the entrance of the dragon ruins and explore. The zombie puppet immediately entered the broken hive and walked toward the entrance of the dragon ruins. But when the zombie puppet walked to the entrance of the dragon ruins, it seemed to hesitate for a moment. Then it jumped into the entrance. Under the entrance, it was 1,000 meters deep. The zombie puppet landed in a dark tunnel, intending to move forward. But after walking for a while, it slowed down. After a while, its legs went soft and it fell to the ground. There was no more sound. Immortal frowned slightly. Then he created another zombie puppet and sent it into the dark tunnel. The result was the same as before. The zombie walked less than 100 meters in the passage before it fell to the ground again and no longer made a sound. Immortal felt strange. Why did he hang up all of a sudden? He used his telekinesis to carefully examine the bodies of the two zombie puppets. He found that the cells in their bodies seemed to have shrunk. They were already cold. It was exactly the same as the zombies he killed with the Sky Splitter Dragon Spear. He suddenly realized something. The Sky Splitter Dragon Spear had a strong restraining effect on the zombie virus. And this was the dragon ruins. Could it be that the dragon's aura or something had a restraining effect on the zombie virus that caused the two zombie puppets to die? In fact, Immortal was right. It was indeed the suppression of the virus by the dragon's aura that had caused the death of the two zombie puppets. Moreover, the reason a virus hive was formed here was to suppress the draconic ruins. However, all these years, the Sanguisurincus of the virus hive had been trying to explore the draconic ruins, but to no avail. Immortal paused for a moment and took out the virtual sentry tower. They were directly placed in the virus hive. Under his probing, the area within a radius of 5 kilometers was quite safe. Only then did he enter the broodmother nest. They arrived at the entrance of the dragon ruins. As soon as he arrived here, he actually felt very comfortable. It was like a person who had been busy all day and finally returned home at night. Immortal thought to himself, this must be because I have the Titan dragon genes in me. Using his telekinesis, he found a huge cave at the end of the dark passage. However, because the distance was too far and the terrain was limited, his telekinesis couldn't detect what was below. At this moment, he no longer hesitated. He jumped straight into the crack. Since he was home, he naturally didn't have to worry anymore. Not long after Immortal entered the draconic ruins, a hurried sound suddenly sounded in his mind. Beep, 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 beep. This was the alarm from the virtual sentry tower. He hurriedly used his telekinesis to investigate. With this investigation, his expression couldn't help but change slightly. In the virus hive, dozens of Sanguisurincus with a diameter of more than a meter crawled out from the ground in the blood pool. These Sanguisurincus surrounded the blood pool that had a huge gully. They formed the walls of the blood pool. Dozens of thick Sanguisurincus laid in the huge gully at the bottom of the blood pool, forming the bottom of the pool. These Sanguisurincus were actually repairing the blood pool. Soon, the blood pool was repaired. Thousands of Sanguisurincus crawled out from the surroundings, and a large amount of blood seeped out from each Sanguisurincus. They were injecting blood into the blood pool. In less than 10 minutes, the blood pool was filled to the brim. Those Sanguisurincus began to repair the remaining walls again. They repaired the 10-meter-wide crack that Immortal had made with his sharp claws. At the same time, dozens of Sanguisurincus wrapped around all the corpse fragments of the bullhorn zombie and dragged them into the blood pool. In the blood pool, bubbles began to appear with a gurgling sound. When Immortal saw this scene, he felt a faint sense of unease in his heart. But he wasn't worried. This was the draconic ruins. Even if they wanted to kill him, they had to be able to enter. At this moment, Immortal first withdrew his mind from the draconic ruins. He had already used his telekinesis to investigate that there was no danger in the draconic ruins. It was really just ruins. He walked briskly along the dark passage. Although he couldn't see his fingers in front of him. But with his level 10 telekinesis, he could clearly see everything around him even with his eyes closed. So he smoothly arrived at the stone cave. He saw that the stone cave was huge. At a rough estimate, it was probably tens of thousands of square meters. There were many stalactites on the top and around the stone cave. Obviously, this cave had been formed a long time ago. Around the walls of the cave, he could occasionally see a few huge claw marks that were a few meters wide and dozens of meters long. Mo Shi's heart was filled with excitement. Giant dragon claw marks. Although he had been injected with the Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer before. But that was only the enhancer. This was the first time he had seen something left behind by a giant dragon. Even if it was just a few claw marks. He came in front of the claw marks and reached out to touch the ancient claw marks. He imagined what kind of giant dragon it was and how sharp its claws were. Its scales shone with a metallic luster. Its dragon eyes shone brightly. Mo Shi couldn't help but be fascinated. After a moment, he withdrew his mind. He continued to investigate his surroundings. There should have been an exit at one end of this huge stone cave. But at this time, the exit had already collapsed. It seemed that if he wanted to go back, he had to go through the crack that he came down from before. But then he didn't find anything. This was only the ruins of the dragon's Denver. If an ordinary person saw that there were no treasures here, they would definitely be disappointed. But Mo Shi wasn't disappointed at all. As long as it was past 12 o'clock, he would sign here. There would be treasures. There would be skills. There would definitely be upgrades. He looked at the watch on his wrist. It was 11 o'clock sharp. There was still an hour. Then he would wait here for an hour. At the same time, above the dragon ruins. In the blood pool in the virus hive. The blood pool was like a pot that had just been boiled, bubbling with blood. One could vaguely see that there were dozens of pieces of flesh in the blood pool. Countless tentacles stretched out from the flesh and slowly connected the flesh and blood together. Then the flesh and blood began to grow more blood vessels, bones, and muscles. Finally, it slowly condensed into a human outline. Chapter 112. Mo Shi sat cross-legged on the ground of the dragon ruins. He closed his eyes and rested, waiting for the arrival of midnight. On the surface, he looked like an old monk. Calm as water, without any ripples. In fact, he was very excited. He was like a virgin who was dating a girl for the first time. When he got the map, he had always wanted to sign in at the dragon ruins. Now that he had finally arrived at the dragon ruins, he could sign in another hour. It would be a lie to say that he was not excited. When he was meditating, he would open his eyes every few minutes to check the time. Damn, only 3 minutes had passed. Who said that time was like water? Who said that time flies? Come out, I promise to kill you. Anyway, he had nothing to do now. At the same time, in the blood pool above the dragon ruins, the outline of the human figure was gradually becoming clearer. Although there was no skin, facial features, hands, and feet appeared. It was not like the level 10 mutated zombies from before, which were easily 30 to 50 meters tall. It was only the size of a normal human. It didn't grow any strange barbs, horns, pouches, or anything like that either. It just had no skin on the surface of its body. In the blood pool, countless thin arms reached into its mouth, nose, ears, and eyes. It looked very scary. The process was very slow. It seemed that the blood pool was carefully creating a zombie that was completely different from the other zombies. At the same time, in base C1, it was chaos. Hundreds of strong mutated zombies rushed into the base. One had to know that there were only a dozen hunters left in base C1. How could they be a match for more than 100 mutated zombies? These mutated zombies were not afraid of rockets, nor were they afraid of bullets. The only thing that could cause them harm was the genetic weapons of the hunters. However, a hunter's genetic weapon would still need to hit their head in order to kill them. However, in the face of these 100 strong mutant zombies, the hunters were completely in a passive state. But the mutated zombies did not seem to have any intention of tangling with them. After repelling the hunters, they began to scatter around the base. They grabbed 2 humans and ran out of the base. In just a few minutes, more than 50 people had been captured. In a room in the residential area. Yang Kong and his daughter hid in the bedroom, not daring to make a sound. However, right at this moment, boom, the door was blasted open by a huge force. A strong mutant zombie broke in. Then, the bedroom door was blasted open. Yang Kong was greatly shocked. This scene was very similar to nearly 10 years ago, when the zombies attacked the residential area. However, at that time, there was a mysterious expert. But now, the mysterious expert was no longer here. In a panic, he hurriedly tried to protect his daughter. But the strong variant zombie grabbed him by the shoulder and flung him away. Bang! His body smashed into a wall. Following a crisp sound, 3 of Yang Kang's ribs were instantly broken. At the same time, blood spurted out from his mouth. His left leg was also broken. "Dad," Yang Kang's daughter screamed. That strong variant zombie no longer paid attention to Yang Kang. She grabbed her daughter, turned around, and jumped out of the door. Little Yen. Yang Kang endured the great pain of his broken ribs and screamed. He supported his body with both hands and crawled out of the door. Little Yen, he screamed at the night outside the door. However, only his daughter's screams, which were getting farther and farther away, responded to him. Yang Kang's head drooped down weakly. In the zombie farm, Happy hid in his room and did not dare to move. After a while, a figure suddenly appeared in the yard of the zombie farm. It raised its head and sniffed. Then it jumped out of Happy's room. It kicked the door open. On the other side, Old Lee was shocked when he heard the sound. He quickly roared, "Happy!" Holding the crowbar, he was about to come out of the room. The strong variant zombie saw Happy in the corner of the room, and there was a hint of joy in its eyes. It reached out to grab Happy. However, at this moment, a fiery red light suddenly lit up on Happy's body. The moment the light lit up, the shock wave spread out instantly. The strong variant zombie was hit and flew 100 meters away. It crashed into the pig shed opposite, broke through the wall, and flew to the training ground outside. Those pigs immediately snorted and fled outside. "I can go out and have fun again. Brothers, let's go." On the training ground, the strong variant zombie got up at this time, a little confused. Another strong mutant zombie jumped over and let out a roar. "What's going on?" The strong variant zombie that was blown away roared, "I don't know." Then it got up and was about to escape. However, in Happy's room, the fiery red light directly broke through the roof and reached 100 meters in the air. The next moment, it turned into a 100-meter-long dragon condensed by flames. This flame dragon was so bright. It reflected the entire base's sky red. Roar! The flame dragon roared to the sky. The dragon's roar resounded throughout the base. All the humans heard this dragon's roar and felt a great shock. And the more than 100 strong variant zombies heard this dragon's roar. Their bodies trembled violently. The next moment, they didn't care about catching people. They turned around and fled out of the base. On the training ground, the 2 strong variant zombies were the closest to it. Hearing this dragon's roar, endless fear rose in their hearts. Then they quickly turned around and fled. However, the fire dragon in the sky folded its wings. It swooped down toward the 2 zombies. When it was 50 meters away from the 2 zombies, the dragon opened its mouth. A flame spurted out. Boom! The area around the 2 strong variant zombies within 100 meters suddenly turned into a sea of fire. The flesh on the 2 strong variant zombies also turned into ashes at an extremely fast speed. Even their bones only lasted for a short 5 seconds. 5 seconds later, the bones also turned into ashes. This was the dragon's breath. The dragon's breath was not an ordinary flame. Even metal and stone would turn into ashes in this dragon's breath. The fire dragon flapped its wings and rose into the air again. It flew back to Happy's room. Then it turned into a fiery red light again. It instantly shrank back into the dragon's breath pearl on Happy's body. Happy was stunned on the spot. After a long time, she took out the walnut-sized dragon's breath pearl. The flame in the pearl seemed to be a little dimmer than before. She looked at it for a long time and said excitedly in her heart, "Brother Mo." Back then, when Emosure left, he left behind this pearl and asked Happy to keep it by his side. She didn't know what this pearl was used for. She just thought it was beautiful. Today, she finally knew. This turned out to be something used to protect herself. She stared at this pearl for a long time. Her beautiful eyes flashed. "Brother Mo, Happy missed you." Old Li had just walked out of the room. Seeing this scene, the crowbar in his hand fell to the ground with a clang. He never thought that he would see such a scene in his lifetime. And the people in the entire C1 base also gathered at the corpse farm. Almost everyone's heart was filled with shock and disbelief. They could understand that the mysterious powerhouse was powerful and his psychic power was strong. But what was with the fire dragon just now? Magic? Daoist technique? Magic? This was completely beyond their understanding. Chapter 113. Below the virus hive, in the dragon ruins. Immortal sat cross-legged in the cave. At a certain moment, he suddenly opened his eyes. He looked down at the time on his wrist. It was exactly midnight. His eyes immediately lit up. His heartbeat couldn't help but speed up. "System, sign in," he said expectantly in his mind. Just like before, the system replied instantly, "That's right. Sign in successful. Sign in location, Dragon Ruins, sign in rewards. 1 drop of Titan Dragon Bloodline Modification Liquid, 2 drop of Titan Dragon Brain Cell Modification Liquid, 3 drop of Dragon Shadow Step upgraded to Lesser Mastery, 4 Red Flame Dragon Breath, 5 Dragon Blood Armor 1, 6 Dragon Cave 1. When Immortal heard these rewards, he instantly felt like he was floating. 1 sign-in, 6 rewards. This was unprecedented in history. Most importantly, according to the simplest and most crude understanding, anything related to the word dragon basically represented awesome, abnormal, heaven-defying, and F***CK. And this time, the 6 rewards all had the word dragon in them. How could this not make him excited? In his mind, he carefully looked at the Dragon Bloodline Modification Liquid. Titan Dragon Bloodline Modification Liquid. After use, the host's body will gradually be transformed into a dragon's body. Immortal moved his mind. He took out this drop of bloodline modification liquid. This was a small translucent porcelain bottle. Inside the porcelain bottle, there was only a drop of blood-red liquid. There was no syringe, so it should be taken orally. This was good too, so he wouldn't have to prick his arm full of needle marks. Immortal opened the bottle cap. All of a sudden, a powerful and mysterious aura that seemed to have traveled through time rushed toward them. His heart and mind were shaken. He leaned his nose close to the bottle and sniffed. There seemed to be the smell of blood. But there was only a faint trace of blood. It was completely bearable. He opened his mouth and poured this drop of blood-red liquid into his mouth. As the liquid entered his mouth, his entire spirit instantly felt refreshed. The liquid seemed to have a mind of its own as it directly evaporated in his mouth. Then, it quickly flowed to his limbs and bones. In the past, the gene enhancer only strengthened his genes. The purpose was to let his body reach the limits of a human. Only then could he withstand the impact of the bloodline modification liquid. Now, the bloodline modification fluid was transforming the human genes in his body into genes that could coexist with humans and dragons. This would lay a solid foundation for him to truly evolve into a giant dragon in the future. Soon, his blood vessels delivered the medicinal power of the bloodline reforming fluid to every part of his body. The first to be modified were all of his blood vessels. If the blood vessels were not strong enough, they would not be able to transport the medicinal efficacy of the bloodline modifying liquid. Then, every cell in his body was slowly being modified by the bloodline modifying fluid. Unlike before, he could level up in 5 minutes. This time, he felt that it would take about 5 to 6 hours. His body started to heat up slowly. Slowly, it grew hotter and hotter. It was as if every cell in his body was being roasted in a fire. However, this kind of roasting did not make him feel uncomfortable. Instead, it was quite comfortable. At the same time, the image of the giant dragon appeared in his mind again. At this moment, the dragon was no longer several hundred meters long. Instead, it reached a length of 1,000 meters. It spread its wings and hovered in the air. It almost blotted out the sky. And this time, the giant dragon's shadow was more solid than before. When its figure flew past, he could even barely see its huge scales that were more than 10 meters wide. At the same time, he could barely see the surrounding environment this time. This was the peak of a tall mountain. Looking down from here, the mountains were small. Immortal did not recognize any of the plants growing on the mountain. They did not seem to be plants from Earth. Immortal did not recognize any of the animals in the forest either. In the distant sky, a huge blue and white moon occupied half of the sky. It reflected the entire world into a blue and white color. Obviously, this was not Earth. Just as Immortal wanted to investigate. In the sky, the giant dragon's shadow let out a dragon's roar. Tens of thousands of beasts on the ground were frightened. Then, the giant dragon's shadow suddenly folded its wings. Its 1,000-meter-long body swooped down from the sky. It went straight for Immortal. Immortal was a little speechless. Again, when it approached Immortal, the giant dragon's huge mouth suddenly opened. It swallowed Immortal. In the next moment, Immortal only felt his vision go black. His consciousness finally returned to reality. Cold sweat had already seeped out of his forehead. Although it was already the third time he had experienced this, facing the 1,000-meter-long dragon still made him frightened. At the same time, his telekinesis could clearly feel that his body's strength was more than 100 times stronger than before. Immortal took a look at his attributes in his mind. Name: Immortal. Level: Level 1 Great Hunter, Level 10 Psychokinesis. Evolution path: Titan Dragon. He had finally leveled up. Immortal was ecstatic. He remembered that when he reached the limit of a zombie hunter, it took him several years to break through the limit and become a hunter. This time, it only took him a few months to break through the limit and become a great hunter. With a thought, his arms had already turned into dragon arms at the same time. His hands had already turned into dragon claws at the same time. However, this was not the end. Black scales began to grow on his chest and back. Each scale was the size of a fingernail. It looked as if he was wearing a bulletproof vest covered with scales. At this moment, his arms and torso were already covered with scales. Immortal was sure that his defensive power was far beyond the reach of ordinary hunters. In his mind, the description of this breastplate appeared. Titan Dragon Breastplate. Defensive power far surpasses the attack power of Earth's creatures. On Earth, nothing can break through it. This breastplate did not mean that Immortal's body was the Titan Dragon's body. In essence, it was the same as the Titan Dragon Claw. They were both Immortal's skills. However, this skill was quite overpowered. No weapon on Earth could break through its defense. At the same time, after becoming a great hunter, genetic martial arts could be used more than once. As his body's strength had greatly increased, his genetic martial arts could be used for 5 minutes. It could barely be used as a conventional weapon. Although 5 minutes was not a long time, it was much better than before when he could only use it once or twice. Moreover, the destructive power of everyone's genetic martial arts was quite shocking. The destruction caused in 5 minutes was definitely quite terrifying. Following that, Immortal took out the bottle of Titan Dragon Brain Cell Modification Fluid. This was also a translucent bottle. There was still only 1 drop of liquid in the bottle. However, this liquid was transparent. It was almost impossible to see from the outside of the bottle. After opening the bottle cap, one could see a small drop of liquid swaying at the bottom of the bottle. Immortal still did not say anything and directly swallowed this drop of Titan Dragon Brain Cell Modification Fluid. His brain did not immediately experience any changes. Instead, in his mind, the system asked Frowny Face consuming the Titan Dragon Brain Cell Modification Fluid has 2 modification directions. 1. Great Psychic. If you choose this direction, your psychic power will be the same as an ordinary psychic. However, the speed of leveling up will far surpass that of ordinary psychic. 2. Long Yanshi. If you choose this direction, your psychic power will increase slowly. However, your psychic power will far surpass that of ordinary psychic. You can skip several ranks and kill psychic. Chapter 114. Immortal looked at the 2 evolution directions. After pondering for a moment, he chose the latter. Evolve into Long Yanshi. The former was a psychic master, although the speed of improvement was fast. But it quickly increased to the limit and became a level 10 psychic master. Then what? Wait for an opportunity to break through? Wait for a few months or a few years? Although Long Xianxia was slow to improve, don't forget that Immortal had the sign-in system. Sign in the designated reward, and then double it. 10 drops of brain cell modification liquid every night. How slow could it be? Moreover, Long Xianxia could kill a psychic master instantly. This was what he valued the most. There was one more thing. Anything with the word dragon in it was definitely awesome. Naturally, he had to choose Long Xianxia. Immortal said in his mind, choose Long Xianxia. In the next moment, the medicinal power began to flow into his brain. His brain was slightly hot. It felt very comfortable. The medicinal power quickly entered his brain and modified every cell of his. This medicinal power didn't modify all his cells into Titan dragon cells. If that was the case, he could only transform into a dragon in the future and never return to being a human. Wouldn't that be a lot less fun? This medicinal power was to modify his cells into dragon cells that were compatible with human cells. In the future, he could transform into a dragon or a human. Immortal could feel that it would take another 5 to 6 hours to evolve into Long Xianxia. With nothing to do, Immortal continued to check the other 3 rewards in his mind. Small success dragon shadow step, 10,000 meters in 1 step. That was 10 kilometers. In other words, 100 kilometers only required 10 steps. It could be said to be quite abnormal. One had to know that a level 1 hunter could only reach 210 meters in 1 step. Red Flame Dragon Breath. This effect was similar to the Dragon Breath Pearl. However, the Dragon Breath Pearl was considered a defensive magic treasure. And this Red Flame Dragon Breath was a skill. A fire dragon emerged from his body and spat out dragon breath, burning everything. Note that it was everything. In other words, even gold and stone could be burned. It was quite domineering. Dragon blood armor. It can be hidden under the skin of the body. When used, it will appear outside the body and form a layer of blood-red scales. Nothing on earth can break it. It was also unbreakable. Sure enough, anything that was related to the word dragon was no ordinary item. With a thought, he took out the dragon blood armor. It looked like a drop of blood-red liquid. However, the drop of blood-red liquid only rolled a few times in his palm before it seeped into his palm. The next moment, a set of blood-red dragon scale armor appeared on the surface of his body. The dragon scale battle armor quickly covered his naked upper body. Then it wrapped around his lower body. Even the pants and shoes were wrapped inside. The armor almost perfectly fit the contours of his body. However, it was as light as a feather and did not affect his mobility at all. The helmet of the armor was a ferocious dragon head. There were more than 10 blood-red barbs that were more than a foot long. Immortal's eyes looked out from the dragon's eyes, and he could see everything around him clearly. He could observe everything in detail. Dragon's lair, dragon's lair. It was equivalent to a portable space. The host could enter it to avoid danger. The host could also stay in it for a long time to cultivate Longwei's domineering and tyrannical aura. The dragon's lair could be entered to avoid danger. Immortal was very satisfied. However, he was still a little puzzled. He asked curiously, Longwei needs to be cultivated? Shouldn't it be naturally formed after evolving into a dragon? The system continued to explain. The host is different from the dragon clan. The dragon clan was born with Longwei. They looked down on the world and dared not disobey. However, the host is a half-baked person, so naturally, the host needs to slowly cultivate Longwei. A half-baked person, Immortal laughed at himself. Then he took out the dragon's lair. When the dragon's lair was in his palm, it looked just like a small stone. It was shaped like a mountain. His mental power sank into the mountain. In the next moment, his figure disappeared from the dragon's ruins. Even the small stone in his hand had disappeared. This was the dragon's lair. On the surface, it looked like a small stone. In fact, it was a space independent of the entire world. At this moment, Immortal had already arrived in this space. He saw that it was also a huge cave. The appearance of the cave was almost exactly the same as the cave in the dragon's ruins. Emo sat cross-legged in the center of the cave. In this cave, he felt both physically and mentally comfortable. It was as if he had returned to his own home. As for Longwei, he could not feel it. After all, Longwei was not like mental power, which could be felt. It was only a psychological effect. However, although it was only a psychological effect, the impact during a battle was considerable. Just think about it. If the opponent was already afraid when facing you, how could he continue fighting? In this dragon's lair, Emo Shi's heart was calm. The excitement, and anticipation from before had all disappeared. He could not help but yawn and close his eyes. Next, he would slowly endure for 5 to 6 hours and wait for his mental power to break through the limit. At the same time, in the dragon's ruins above the dragon's ruins. In the blood pool, the human silhouette had completely condensed and formed. Its facial features, limbs, and torso were exactly the same as a human's. Only the surface of the body had no skin. His bloody flesh was directly exposed to the air. Thousands of blood-red tentacles slowly retracted into its body. At this moment, the blood in the blood pool had completely dried up. All the sanguisurincus had retracted back to the ground. The aura of this zombie was far from that of ordinary strong mutated zombies. It stood up and roared into the sky. Roar. Within a 50-kilometer radius, all the zombies and mutated beasts heard this roar and prostrated themselves on the ground. Even the level 10 strong mutated zombies directly prostrated themselves. They let out a hiss from their throats to express their submission. This skinless zombie turned its head to look at the entrance of the dragon's ruins. With just one step, it had jumped more than 300 meters. It came to the entrance of the dragon's ruins. Ordinary zombies did not dare to come close at all. It stood at the entrance of the dragon's ruins, but it did not seem to be affected at all. Its right arm stretched out of the entrance of the dragon's ruins. Its entire right arm suddenly turned into dozens of sanguisurincus and extended into the dragon's ruins. It had received an order from the nest to destroy that human. Soon, its sanguisurincus extended over 1,000 meters. It entered the dark passage under the dragon's ruins. When the group of zombies in the distance saw this scene, they all bowed down and worshipped it. All these years, the crack in the nest had always given them a very dangerous feeling. This made them very angry, and they had wanted to enter the crack several times to investigate. However, none of the zombies could get close to the crack. Once they got close, their bodies would quickly dry up. Now, the zombie that the blood pool had used up all the blood to create had actually probed the sanguisurincus into the crack. How could this not make them excited? However, their excitement only lasted for a short while. Then, they saw that the skinless zombie's entire right arm had rapidly shriveled up. Even the dozens of sanguisurincus had all withered and shriveled up. In the end, its entire right arm broke off like a withered branch. Chapter 115. The arm of the zombie without skin quickly shriveled. In the end, it broke with a crack. This made all the zombies' eyes turn cold, and their hearts were filled with fear. That crack really couldn't be provoked. The zombie without skin roared angrily at the sky. Soon its right arm. Its flesh and blood squirmed, and a new arm quickly grew out. This time, its arm turned into a round-headed giant hammer. The handle of the giant hammer was hundreds of meters long. The diameter of the hammer head was more than 20 meters. It waved its right arm. The giant hammer drew a huge semicircle in the air. It smashed fiercely on the crack. Rumble, the crack suddenly caved in. Including the surroundings of the crack, the ground within a radius of 100 meters collapsed with a bang. Smoke and dust flew and stones cracked. It was as if the earth was moving, as if the mountains were shaking. In a moment, the crack had been buried. However, this still couldn't explain the hatred in its heart. It was created by the blood pool of the broodmother. The order given to it by the broodmother was to kill that human. But now, although it had collapsed the crack, it knew that the human was not dead. In its anger, It roared to the sky again. Roar, roar. In the next moment, the bones on its back seemed to be alive and squirmed. 2 bloody wounds appeared on its back. Then, a pair of demon-like wings stretched out. This pair of wings was 5 meters wide, and blood was dripping from them. It flapped its wings and flew directly to the west. At this time, it was around 11 o'clock in the morning. 30 ragged and haggard humans had just entered the C2 base. After escaping from that hellish city last night, they had returned to the C2 base after a night of running. Along the way, they didn't dare to stop for a moment. They were afraid of being discovered by mutated zombies or mutated beasts. In the end, they didn't know if it was because of good luck or other reasons. Their journey was very smooth. They almost didn't encounter any danger and arrived at the C2 base. In the base, everyone was pleasantly surprised. Who would have thought that these humans who had been captured would be able to return again? One had to know that these people were all ordinary people. And half of them were women. Some of them had been captured for a day, while others had been captured for several days. It was definitely a miracle that he was able to return to the base safely. The head of the base asked his men to settle them down and provide them with food and water. When these people had calmed down a little, the bureau chief personally came over to question them. "Can you tell me what you encountered?" Everyone looked at each other. Finally, a young man stepped forward and answered. "Chief, we were captured and brought to a city. There are zombies everywhere. I'm afraid there are millions of them." The bureau chief was surprised when he heard that. The other hunters were also surprised. The young man continued, "We've been locked up inside an abandoned school building. We've been assigned 2 people to a classroom. We were already in despair and thought that we were going to die. But last night, we heard all the zombies in the city howling like crazy. He howled for more than an hour. After that, the entire city fell silent as death. Then, the door to our classroom seemed to have been kicked open. But when we came out to check, we didn't see anyone. We only saw the entire city was littered with broken limbs and bodies. Blood flowed along the gutters and into the sewers. The river that passed through the city also became a river of blood. That city has completely turned into a city of death. It's like hell." At this point, the young man stopped. He seemed to still have lingering fear. As for the other 29 people, their complexions also turned pale. They didn't dare to continue. They didn't even want to think about the horrible scene in that city. A hunter next to them couldn't help but ask, "Who did it?" The 30 people shook their heads. "I don't know. When we came out, we only saw a hellish scene. Other than that, we didn't see anything." The young man answered. The bureau chief looked at the hunters. He saw that the hunters were all in disbelief. When they were exploring the east, they had also gone to the edge of that city. But there were more than 2 million zombies in that city. There were many mutated zombies among them. There were probably thousands of strong mutated zombies. So they didn't dare to continue exploring. But now, those 2 million zombies and thousands of strong mutated zombies were all killed. There was no doubt that this was done by a human. It was impossible for zombies to kill so many of their own kind. But what kind of human was he to have such a terrifying fighting strength? Killing 2 million zombies within an hour, including thousands of strong mutated zombies. This was far beyond the scope of their understanding. The bureau chief couldn't help but think of the mysterious strong man that Xianxia mentioned before. Could it be him? But he couldn't imagine what kind of strong man could have such terrifying strength. But no matter who did it, the entire C2 base should thank that person. He was still worried that there would be more and more strong mutated zombies in that city. The threat to C2 base was getting bigger. Now, all the zombies in that city were killed by that strong man. He helped them solve a huge problem. If one day he found out who the mysterious strong man was, he must thank that person. However, at this moment, the alarm in the base suddenly sounded. D. The bureau chief frowned slightly. He ordered the 30 people to settle down. At the same time, he led the hunters to the wall. When he came to the first wall, he saw a figure flapping its wings and floating in the sky. The strangest thing was that this figure was actually a human. There was no skin on its body, and its bloody flesh was exposed to the air. They had seen many flying mutated beasts before, but they had never seen a zombie that could fly. The zombie with wings roared and flew towards the ground. Fire! The bureau chief quickly shouted. Da-da-da! The machine gun bullets were wildly splashed at the flying zombie. However, it was useless. Shio shio shio, boom boom boom. The rocket shells hit the flying zombie. However, that guy's body was actually able to withstand the bombardment of the rocket. Seeing this, a hunter's right arm turned into a 100-meter-long spear and stabbed at the flying zombie. Another hunter's right arm turned into a 100-meter-long giant sickle and cut at the flying zombie. However, the flying zombie was extremely fast. It dodged the two genetic weapons and retracted its wings. Boom! It brazenly smashed into the base. A shock wave instantly spread out. The hunters who were closest to him were sent flying far away by the shockwave. When the rest of the hunters saw this, they were all shocked. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.